Good evening and welcome to the Overwatch Pacific Championship Season 2 qualifiers. Season 1 just ended. I feel like it was yesterday. Already into the Season 2 kind of stuff happening.
It felt weird to hear you say Season 2 qualifiers,
exactly.
actually.
All right, well, to sort of leave the introductions here, Matt, Pixie, Carol, I'm also Kevin AVRL Walker. You've already known us from the first season. We're going to kick things off now with a couple of some new blood for Season 2. So if you weren't sure what the format was going ahead, the two bottom teams from Season 1 did drop into the promotion and relegation tournament, which took place online a few weeks ago. So that was DeToNator Gold and Sunsister, both the Japanese teams who finished 7th and 8th on the Season 1 ladder. They had to play their way online against 6 brand new teams from across Asia Pacific.
And a bit of unfortunate news in there as well if you were a Sunsister fan. They have, of course, already been eliminated on that first day. They were to be frank, out quite quick, and I think that really just kind of shows the strength of some of this new blood. Also in that is DeToNator Gold, now exists as DeToNator Korea, and are fighting for their spot. Here is the format for the night.
So the format has changed a little bit. The best of 5 is still exactly as you'd expect. The 5 maps, the 5 map game modes rather, are still in the same order. You're going to get Control followed directly by Hybrid, and then Assault, and then Escort, and then another Hybrid should we make it that far. And before we get into the teams really quickly as well, the way the format works is because there is no home and away sides, there is a predetermined control map to start every single match, and we'll get into what those details are, but we do have the teams already on screen. We're going to start things off this evening with DeToNator Korea and Talon Esports from Hong Kong.
DeToNator Korea are looking like a really, really interesting team, super strong team as it is, and are seeming to consist of almost entirely new blood as well. There is not a whole lot known about a lot of these players. They're not necessarily solo queue superstars or anything like that. Some have been in teams before, don't get me wrong here, but it's not like there's really a lot of history with these guys. They haven't necessarily played together on a lot of teams before. This is a very interesting, unknown roster that is reportedly looking very strong.
If you're sort of wondering where DeToNator Gold went in the promotion relegation tournament that took place online, DeToNator Korea came in and directly replaced DeToNator Gold in that DeToNator spot for that promotion relegation tournament. Now on your screens is Talon Esports from Hong Kong. They have 2 Hong Kong members and 4 members from Taiwan. So the organizations from Hong Kong, they are based in Taiwan, and they have been playing professionally in Taiwan for the past, I would like to say, at least 1 month. I'm going to say even a couple months now. They've been playing for some time as a team together in a team house in Taiwan, preparing specifically just for this tournament.
Yeah, and again, interestingly, looking quite strong. And the interesting thing as well about, especially the players from Taiwan, is a lot of what is considered to be the quote-unquote superstar talent was really snapped up by those organizations like Flash Wolves and AHQ. But there are still a lot of strong players out there, much like we've got this going on with DeToNator Korea. It's a lot of great players who aren't necessarily in tournaments like Apex, but they are still very good. Yeah. And this is actually where they feel is the opportunity to prove themselves. Talon specifically probably had the roughest run to get into this top 4 here today, but they are looking good. Like you said, they have been preparing specifically for this, and this is exactly where I expect a team like this to really step up and take people by surprise.
And it's interesting you say, in regards to the Taiwanese talent, because Talon Esports does have Hong Kong players, and Hong Kong also has a talent pool that I think now the Taiwanese teams are looking at to try and find more fresher blood, or
very
just
much taking notice of
unnoticed talent, and one of the key players in that is actually Mui. So hopefully we'll get a chance to have a look at each player specifically soon. But Mui from Hong Kong, he's a part of the Hong Kong national squad going into the World Cup this weekend in Shanghai, by the way, and is an extremely good player. Who Mango Jai is on his team for the Hong Kong representative team going to the World Cups as well. So it's definitely some of the best talent from Hong Kong being represented now in the OPC as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Mango Jai there as well, because of course he is on the Team Hong Kong Attitude, and it's a bit of a similar situation with the makeup of that team. So you're quite right there with, a lot of these Taiwanese teams looking to places, especially like Hong Kong, for these sorts of members, and getting a bit of a flyby now. A lot of concentration, of course. All these players and teams are currently live in the Blizzard E Stadium in Taipei. Yeah, this is the whole lot of them. So of course they are out here for these 2 days, and it puts a bit of pressure down, right? Because the other interesting thing is, because both Sunsister and DeToNator Gold are no longer here, these are all teams that do not necessarily have experience in that live LAN environment.
Exactly.
And that actually adds another factor, and it's one that you can't prepare for. And when I talk about a team that maybe had a harder run or even a team that had a better run coming into this 2 days where they're in that live LAN, honestly, the slate is wiped clean. That may just mean nothing because the extra pressure, having that extra factor to deal with the live situation, the live audience, the other team being just right over there, it can really change up how these teams play the game because it really does affect your mental state.
Not only that, but you really consider teams coming from other countries as well. DeToNator Korea, obviously Japanese org, but they've had to move from Korea to what I assume to be then Japan and now into Taiwan as we're about to head into map number 1, Lijiang Tower. No introductions necessary. And it's going to be DeToNator Korea on the blue side and of course Talon Esports on the red side.
Very interesting. Nothing too wild in the team comps.
And it's interesting. What the most interesting thing is Mui starting things off on the Sombra as well, which is something the Taiwanese teams definitely have taken a liking to.
Hanji, not too much of an overstep, but very hard punished here. Actually, deep dives in from the DeToNator Korea side.
And TroTo having a fantastic start as well. This is a really bad situation for Talon when you consider that they had to start off with A as Sombra. They're going to go with the Sombra to start with, and now they're behind. Now the Sombra was one of the players that actually died. Gonna get that EMP severely delayed as well as losing a decent amount of health back control starting off.
Interesting to note as well, they are of course subbing out one of the healers for the Sombra. Not too unusual of course on control, but not the only way to play Sombra these days, but Mui again getting really aggressive on, going to have to go ahead and duck out Hanji as well, and this is a push that's already been repelled. Even a trade back onto him might not really be enough here, but Esso and Small Pond, they're holding down the fort here and keeping this one alive as Vexel finds himself too far deep now, and they are looking to kind of strike back on this one. Do need to respect the extra ult charge from DeToNator, but DeToNator look like they're just going to take this one on the chin, happy to draw out that tactical visor and maybe look to come in for a regrab.
And I think for Talon as well, they started off a little bit tricky there. But we got pushed out extremely early, had to just translocate directly out of there. Esso picked up the first skill, and then Small Ponds just sort of converted after that. The thing to consider about Talon's lineup here is they don't have a chance to sort of swap off. Small Pond's usually their support player. Mui is usually their Tracer player, so they're stuck running this lineup no matter how we look at it.
Good dive onto Small Pond, but again, Vexel needs to be careful not to overextend as him is down, so he's going to have to really make his way out of there somehow. Doesn't want to blow the ultimate, but kind of forced out, and Esso keeping the pressure on the back line. This means that actually Vexel is a little bit isolated now as Talon wants to keep the fight going. Good pick onto Small Pond to even up the score a little bit. Esso is still very unanswered here, trying to keep the pressure up, but Raphael turns tail, deals with him with that attack visor, and now DeToNator in earnest can strike back. This is a good stalling tool out of the D.Va here, but it's just going to buy extra time for Talon in terms of the percentage. This is going to be a DeToNator cap.
Talon have actually done extremely well here because not only did they bait all the ultimates out of DeToNator, but actually they're coming back with a couple of ultimates that have recharged. Now one of those was EMP, and they never lost control of the cap. They're still racking up progress, and they're getting away with this.
Yeah, Mui keeping it kind of held down, and because Small Pond went down early enough, he actually rejoined that one, and you're right, DeToNator never really getting the cap through. Didn't convert the last few kills over.
For the amount of ultimates DeToNator used, that was a very unfortunate situation for them to be in, and they still haven't managed to get the cap over. The EMP from Mui was good enough. He actually got 2 EMPs, I believe, in one life. He didn't even manage to die there, so got the recharge extremely quickly. Gets a lot of damage on the TroTo as well, but now it's going to be DeToNator able to come back in with a decent ultimate advantage.
Yeah, they're going to have to really make use of it as well. Very early sound barrier only really catches Raphael. They desperately need to keep him alive, but Small Pond all shut down with attack visor running. So now DeToNator, big window for them as they try and convert a few more, looking to pressure lunch out. And they've got Hanji as well caught out a little bit. Pulse Bomb comes out as well from Esso. I'm not sure if that was quite necessary because this is going to go the way of DeToNator, but they do push it up to that 98 threshold. Oh, just going to go to 90. Oh, no, it stays on 98. There we go.
I think you'll take that if you're Talon. You'll take it for sure because you also got the additional Pulse Bomb out of TroTo that you said maybe was not quite necessary. Raphael smartly held onto the attack visor, and they're going to need a decent amount to be able to hold on here. I expect the EMP to come out at any moment, and the EMP will be devastating.
Yeah, it can't counter out too much, but you're right, there aren't really many ultimates available, and they're straight onto Ivar as well. Good target selection there. That is the open up from Raphael to try and turn this one back around as Hanji a bit too deep. Wasn't able to use that ultimate, and now the healers are all just pressured out. Lunch losing the mech means DeToNator poised to kind of hold on to this one, and that was really the few resources Talon had to dedicate to this one before DeToNator got their own ults back up.
The good news is, as far as EMP goes, it kind of just gives you a free ultimate to use. EMP charges fast enough that you can afford to give it out there, recharge for the next fight. Mui's already nearly on 40%. Again, Talon didn't have to use any other ultimates there, so it's a bit of a dry push run. They got to experiment a little, dip their toes in the water, find out what DeToNator had to play with, and they found exactly what that was. A couple of ultimates used by DeToNator already, now they're playing behind.
Now looking to get aggressive again. They kind of need to convert it on this fight here. Oh, Pulse Bomb out from Tro to catch a small pawn. That's a really great way to start for DeToNator. Hanji as well committing the ultimate, which is really all they have aside from the self-destruct from Lunch, which looks to be forced out now as he is getting a bit too low. They do at least convert onto Trona. Oh, catching him with the self-destruct. May just turn the tides here, but they still have to fight through Raphael.
Nice.
Good bump, and now Talon look to be setting up on top of this one. If they can keep the members of DeToNator off as well after capping, then with that 98%, they actually might not get an overtime here, DeToNator. So they need to be careful with how they play the rest of this out. Trona's going to have to try and stall this one, get feet on the point after the cap goes over and not die beforehand. Talon clearing out the last few members. Now want to try and hunt for Trona if they can. Trona needs to not lose his life. DeToNator are going to commit. They're going to look to stall with him here. They are trying to convert onto the small pawn, but he's just a little bit too entrenched as Mui is keeping the pressure on the back line so that they can't reinforce. Talon still locking down the point, and Trona finally trades one back, but it's going to be a little bit too late now. Talon should be able to get this cap over once Ivar is demeched and out.
Yeah, absolutely. DeToNator still losing members here. The mech is really the last thing that's going to keep DeToNator inside this game. Just trying to escape with whatever they got. They can't afford to let the cap go over at all. As soon as the cap goes over, we hit 98%. That's just going to be a cap and the game's over.
And that is indeed how it plays out as well. Lunch at the end securing one against his counterpart, and that is a fight that actually was turned around by that self-destruct and then closed out by it. So it goes to show how long that final scrap lasted for. So actually, really good skill being shown by Talon there and actually keeping that point in lockdown.
And I think Talon need a strong start like this because they are going against two Korean teams here, one of which is a Korean powerhouse team, Radiant. We're going to talk about that later when they have their match coming on. But they have to get past one of the Korean teams first, which is DeToNator Korea. And for both Talon and Liberland Supreme, they're the clear underdogs in this entire qualifier. You got to get a good showing against both Korean teams if you want to make it into OPC.
Exactly, and there's a very real possibility that, you know, let's say Talon lose here. When they end up in that losers bracket match, which is going to play off for that spot, there is a very real chance that they will be against either DeToNator Korea or Radiant for that. So you're right, a good showing here, super important. And even just in the context of not wanting to drop into that losers bracket if they can so help it.
All right, so Mui's actually on the Genji this time, and Esso is going to stay onto the Tracer. That's what they're going to opt to for this. So
wow.
We do see Small Pond back onto the support.
Good catch there, actually, and they're trying to open this up a lot, and as Esso takes down his counterpart as well, DeToNator just really overextending in this dive. They're still trying to keep the pressure on, and they do have a lot of ground, but honestly, Talon are the ones actually getting the kills. No one's really answering any of these diving DPS members of Talon, and honestly, DeToNator have to fix that now.
It's just definitely, in terms of how DeToNator working on Control Center, they had a much better opening. Now we're going to Gardens. This is a far more worse opening for Talon. I actually kind of like their composition a little bit more. They're not being punished so early for using the Sombra, which DeToNator had in the Control Center. Now we're going for a much more straight man fight between both teams. You're starting to see the strength of Talon without the early Sombra start.
Yeah, and we're also starting to see Esso shine. We're already seeing it a little bit in the first map there, but honestly, this guy's just going so unanswered. As I say that, Schroeder landing shots in the back of him as Small Pond also going down to his own counterpart, so Talon looking to get forced back off this move. He does not convert off that Dragon Blade at all. No real response frags from them at all. In fact, as Talon just kind of gets steamrolled as the point goes back over to DeToNator.
And then for minimal usage as well, when I say minimal, I mean none, because they got away with just getting individual pickouts. Talon had nothing in response. I would have kind of expected, the Dragon Blade to get a little bit more there from Mui because he spent a decent amount of Dragon Blade just slashing at the pillar, not getting any kills, not getting nearly enough damage, and it's costing them.
Yeah, but I tell you, he really put the hurt on that pillar. Good Pulse Bomb out to try and punish the dive. It forces out the Transcendence, but DeToNator have a little bit to go off. Oh, but great Pulse Bomb from Esso onto him. And now it's just going to be a little bit of panic mode out of DeToNator. They're going to have to throw some more ultimates at this one. They do catch Small Pond, but they're really struggling against this dive. Hanji is now going unanswered, much like Esso tends to be, as he is still cleaning up house on the back line as Talon already looking poised to re-grab, and Mui just going deep to close it out on Trona here.
Pixel's going to actually go for the stalk here, but he actually got to get it on the point if you want to make sure you get the stall in properly. That's a bit of a mistake.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. He got the kill, but
he wanted to get out. He's like, get out of my way.
I would have preferred the progress here from the stall. That would have been a lot more important for DeToNator than for Pixel to try and just get the solo kill into Hanji.
No, you're completely right there, and even then, Hanji is going to be able to reinforce, so the solo kill itself doesn't even garner that much value, but now DeToNator again going in for the dive, but once again need to be ready to answer these divers themselves. Yeah, that's the opening kill onto him there. And the boof as well, even as Trona commits some to kind of strike back. Actually, Bexel may just be opening this one up. Never mind, it's going to be Dragon Blade just to kind of secure this one out. And the frags...
There's no targets.
There are, yeah, because, I mean, there are too many members dead. Look, the kills are kind of going back and forth a little bit in that fight, but actually Talon had the ground the whole time around, and DeToNator was scattered, man.
That was really awkward because DeToNator lost half their team, Talon also lost half their team, and Mui was really sort of pressured to do something, bring out the Dragon Blade just to prepare for the eventuality of maybe we'll lose this fight, I gotta try and secure it. Ended up not needing it anyway, so there it is.
Yeah, you can at least appreciate doing that though, because they have so many other resources available, such as the self-destruct that kills Nakia. Bexel does finally find his counterpart this time and is going to continue that pressure on, but Raphael going down, and Esso still very unanswered, looking to convert on DeToNator here, who will be able to get back to the health pack, but Esso can just rejoin the fight on the point itself. That's what really matters here. Bexel finally converting a few more through for his team, and they should be able to push this one over the line, get the grab in, but Talon are very much on the cusp of being up in this.
Well, Talon don't have that 98% progress advantage like they did last time, so for DeToNator, I think they can play a little bit more of a controlled style where they don't have to feel like they're so desperately holding onto the cap like they were before. Now, if they do lose the cap, they're guaranteed the overtime. They can actually play for the overtime, which they would have had before on Control Center as well. So for DeToNator, I'm liking where they're standing, and they got ultimate advantage. It's working out.
Ooh, Stick does go wide, but forces out the Transcendence. But that's time for Hanji to get his ult and Mui to open up with his as he catches him. He's going to have to spend his time dealing with Raphael, but that means Raphael isn't on the point itself, which is where Talon are, and where they're currently winning the fight as they just start to clean up all these members of DeToNator now. Honestly, the pressure is just really unrelenting. It seems DeToNator are good on the offense, but really struggling against Talon's own dive.
And I think for DeToNator as well, maybe a better option would be to try and commit your players onto the cap. You see Raphael and you see him as well trying to back off. I don't think that's time to be really backing off there. They were probably going to die anyway. I don't know.
Keeping it alive for a little bit longer at least, getting the stall out, but the cap had gone the way of Talon, and the extra kills coming through here means this is just a trickle. And honestly, DeToNator put up more of a fight on the last one, and Talon were able to keep that one on lockdown. I very much expect a similar performance here, and there is going to be the last member. Actually, no, one more to go. There we go, that's the last member cleaned up now. And Talon 2-0 up.
Which has been a pretty... That last map on Gardens was a much more convincing victory by Talon. I felt like the Control Center one was a much more hard-fought kind of victory from, you know, and a good effort from both teams, and much of the difficulty that Talon faced earlier on for Control Center was due to the fact that they went for the Sombra early, didn't quite work out for them. They decided to stay onto it, which, by the way, was because they couldn't swap off. They were committed to playing Sombra due to the fact that, you know, Small Palm was already onto the Soldier. He can't effectively go back onto a support, and then this is a really messed up situation.
And so I find that interesting as well that Small Palm can play the Soldier.
Well, it's kind of like
but
Machi,
doesn't
right?
go onto the Sombra. I find that very interesting.
It's kind of like Machi, right, where Kiyomi does also play the Soldier as a support player, but, you know, back to Talon a little bit, that was part of the reason why they struggled so much at Control Center. So it makes sense that if they don't run that on Gardens, they had a much better time.
In any case, now DeToNator needing to answer back now on Gardens, and they're once again opting into this Soldier Tracer, long gun, short gun. Don't quite have the same dive ratio, but good securing of the high ground this time means Hanji finds himself too deep, and now Mui on the wrong side of it as well. This is now a window for DeToNator to get aggressive themselves. If they can convert a few more over, in so doing, they'll be well set as they catch lunch. There we go. Booking it to the point now, and it should be theirs to take.
And punishing DeToNator for over-aggression, I would like to say, because Hanji went in, got heavily punished, and all Raphael did, you saw it from his perspective, but just had to back off, and punishing Winston's has been sort of key for both teams as well. Mui was ineffective in that last fight, just hiding over that wall. Now Talon are finding the opposite situation where they're the ones getting these early picks.
Yeah, and this does seem to happen a lot with DeToNator right now. That's Toronto going down immediately after his Winston in the same kind of situation, and Talon are now all over this point. Look at how much more unanswered Esso is than Toronto by comparison. Yeah, they need to get out, but they're busy going in, trying to drag more time out of that clock. But honestly, this is Talon's point now, much as it was DeToNator's a moment ago. Lost one to secure it does mean they're a little lean for resources now, but a well-secured point.
It kind of makes it slightly worth it because you got one ultimate out of Talon for a couple of those extra deaths that were kind of preventable for DeToNator. They don't really get enough percentage in the terms of, I don't think they needed to get that percentage. They could have easily just left it about 25%. Getting the 32% doesn't help them that much more, but I think the extra deaths will affect them a lot more.
Yeah, now eyes on Esso here, by the way. Just take a look at how he kind of ducks in and out of this one. Transcendence is forced, but it's more in response to that sound barrier. So now again, DeToNator need to find a way to go aggressive. They have got Raphael up on this high ground, which will be a big help to them as trying to pick out Small Pond here. This is a really good window for them, but they need to convert a few more, and Raphael on this low ground makes them very vulnerable to Hanji. Esso still not really answered for either, but they are at least on the point. It's now Talon who are going to have to fight onto it themselves, but they do start to convert a couple of kills. No, it's going to be Toronto closing them out now. getting the last few out as the Transcendence keep the team safe.
Kill.
Yeah, triple indeed, and they are going to secure themselves the point.
Absolutely disgusting play from DeToNator so far, at least from the Toronto side of things. And Toronto's been one of those players, when you look across the entire Lijiang so far, he was definitely a factor in Control Center, less so of a factor on Gardens, and now coming back into things on the night market again. So very close progress. Both teams just kind of swapping turns, capping this point.
Yeah, getting very aggressive again. Good pulse bomb into the mix to get great damage onto the Winston. Doesn't quite convert, and Mui is converting, so never mind all that. And once again, Trona and Bexel are just kind of finding themselves in the wrong parts of the fight. This time, it's not so much that they got collapsed upon, but they just weren't really where the fight was.
Definitely the best, I would say, Dragon Blade out of Mui so far, or at least the most successful one. He's had some interesting attempts, one of which slashing a pillar. The other one had to deflect super early, tried to get a kill onto Raphael, eventually gets it on him, but this time around, immediately picks up kills right off the bat.
And actually, on top of that, his pressure has been quite consistent. I mean, Dragon Blades aside, you had to give the guy credit where credit is due, but again, Raphael uncontested on this high ground is really helping DeToNator out here, but honestly, Talon are just kind of content to wait on the point itself. Going to force DeToNator out into the open. They're all going to have to duck and hide. Esso converts. While they're all ducking and hiding, he converts more, and finally gets answered back by Trona, but it is probably too late for DeToNator to really keep this push alive here, unless they want to commit ults and get some crazy kills here. They're not really getting them, as Mui is just keeping the pressure on. Doesn't want to find himself too deep. It's going to force out a sound barrier, and actually, that's really interesting. It does work out, though, because Mui goes down, and Transcendence was forced out by Eso. Is going to be able to get some good pulse bomb damage down, but they aren't able to convert, and now they're actually getting beaten back. DeToNator were just barely able to regroup, and suddenly Talon are actually the ones in a little bit of disarray here as they're trying to run back towards the point that DeToNator have now set themselves up on, and they will get themselves a cap.
I'll say one thing DeToNator have done consistently very well is playing the economic game extremely efficiently. They didn't have to overcommit ultimates there, something Talon unfortunately have done a number of fights. Talon are much better at finding the early engagements, getting the early picks out. Sometimes they do get punished for their own a little bit of over-aggression, but overall, DeToNator have better ultimate usage, I'd say, in the game.
Good catch on to Esso at the top of that, and Mui as well is going to pay for his overextension with his life. Transcendence comes out because they want to secure a big fight here. They know if they can stagger these respawns, then Talon are going to struggle for this final fight, but they are going to get one.
Oh, DeToNator is set up for at least to be able to stall out the cap. They're going to get 2 guaranteed full team respawns here, so they're going to get their current lives and then respawn fully, assuming that Rixel keeps himself alive, or Bixel keeps himself alive, Primal Rage. That's an early force, though. Yeah,
really early force, as Raphael is really unopposed with this tactical visor. As much as it's not him getting the kills, he's putting it down the damage as everyone runs for the point, and now there's no Talon members on the point. All ultimates committed by DeToNator to secure it out. Now Talon are in that trickle point. Small pot nowhere near this one to contest it, and it will be DeToNator finally swinging back to put it 2-1.
Early celebrations from Bixel, or he knew exactly where that map was going to go. So Night Markets was really 50-50 right until the end, because you had a sort of situation where both teams sitting on roughly the 43-45% progress. Then right at the end, Talon were they lost one really important fight, because there was the one fight for DeToNator where they came in, only used, I think it was Nakyup used the sound barrier. They didn't have to use anything else. I thought maybe you would force, I believe Ivan is the Zenyatta player. So I was assuming you were going to force Ivar to also
I think it's him, actually.
Is it actually him?
Yeah.
So I thought you
Ivar is the Lucio.
Yeah, absolutely right. So I thought you were going to use the Transcendence out of him as well, but I actually didn't need to use that.
Yeah.
They saved the other ultimates, very conservative, like I said, well played economically, and that really paid off for them because they were able to leverage those ultimates in the final fight, which was far more important.
Yeah, absolutely correct there. And something I noted on Garden seems to have kind of had its next moment of evolution there. DeToNator, they seem to be doing better when they are being the proactive team, and in that last one on Night Market, suddenly Talon kind of lost all their proactivity, and DeToNator were really getting aggressive and executing this. See if they can pull it off again now, opening skirmishes. Once again, Talon going deep, but this time Hanji being careful to not go too deep. And Esso getting pressured off means he won't have free reign. DeToNator looking a little bit better now. They're really matching Talon blow for blow, trying to beat them back a little. Oh, unfortunately losing Bexel in that one as Small Pot is still uncontested here. Looking a little bit healthier as he's going to start wheeling around, and Talon are going to take the ground on the point.
Talon are playing this game exactly the way they need it based on composition. They're playing patiently, they're playing for setup, they know they got health back control really important with the Sombra ultimate as well. The EMP comes off
nice
so
commit.
early, and they should clean up big time here.
That's beautiful placement as well. Straight lunch out of the mech there as Esso getting aggressive as well. Also, Ivar out of the mech, importantly, so here we go. Smallpon is on the point just to honestly lay down the last little bit of damage. Cap has gone over, and Nakyup for good measure going down. Smallpon now with this visor is going to make it nice and easy for them to hold ground.
So Talon are definitely off to a much better opening. They had a rough opening on control center the first time we saw it. This is how they wanted to execute their composition last time. They will get that opportunity now. And I think for DeToNator, we talked about them playing aggressively sometimes. That was a situation where I expected a little bit more aggression out of DeToNator, knowing there was going to be a Sombra on the other side.
Yeah, it's like there was this brief moment where suddenly they hesitated, like, oh, let's not go too deep. But actually, you've got to have that confidence. But now, let's see if they have the confidence again or if they lack it, because Ivar already down means that honestly, Raphael is not as uncontested up here as he would like to be, especially not with this self-destruct down. Going to back off. He does catch lunch out of the mech, but he's not going to catch anything more. Now, going to have to commit to the low ground. Oh, good catch from Demui. Might just be enough to help swing it as DeToNator are actually on the point itself.
Nice.
Still uncontested, and Ivar back in the mech means they are going to be able to secure that one. Very nicely handled by DeToNator.
Yeah, Raphael in particular really played the situation well. He used a tactical visor and sort of kind of a key moment. It was a bit 50-50 for me because you had, on the other side, you had Lunch using the self-destruct, and I thought, well, you're going to die to the self-destruct Raphael if you don't hide. He manages to kill Lunch, then convert onto a couple of other players as well, so extremely well played.
Yeah, and that was actually the confidence I felt they were lacking in the opening skirmish. So DeToNator absolutely adapting. Now let's see if they adapt to the EMP, and indeed they are. Mui taken out a little bit too deep on that one, and again, Raphael keeping this one in lockdown. Esso still a little uncontested on the side, is going to loop around even further to try and contest Ivar's mech here. Not a situation he wants to be in. Going to be forced to commit the self-destruct, but it is going to pressure out the side here as the rest of DeToNator is converting kills. So Talon finding themselves a little overextended in that regard, and honestly,
absolutely,
DeToNator are really adapting
still
well.
Overextended. Look, they might just get killed a little bit more here because they're still losing members, including Anji. And the EMP was just, unfortunate, it was a well-placed EMP, but the rest of the team was unable to follow up. So in terms of coordination there from Talon, it was not well committed as a team as a whole.
Yeah, not the cleanest dive I've ever seen in my life, but in any case, they are still looking strong in other regards, so they are very able to strike back, and that's one way to do it. Esso again.
Why was him
when
there?
He's oh dear, Naki up though, catching lunch. Means they're a little bit worse for wear in terms of tanks. They're trying to answer back here as they get aggressive with Small Pond, but he's too deep with Bexel behind him. Loses his life for it, and now they're very lean for resources. Raphael opening up this tactical visor to secure the fights. Ooh, dear, loses his life. But actually now Talon can keep going aggressive here. Once again, Esso is just kind of held onto his life and kept racking up the kills.
Kona's going to try and stall this one out, so for DeToNator, they're going to rack up 90+%, but eventually, in fact, not even 90%, and eventually they're going to give that one up. And for Talon, they don't have a lot to work with here. Lunch is going to get the self-destruct, I believe, unless that's the baby Devo. I don't think it is. And for Mui, this is going to be a really quick EMP if Talon wants to survive.
That was a little bit tricky for Talon though. They did use a lot of resources, and they have a few more coming up, but they're going to be mostly just be trying to get frags, and that's a great way to start as they catch out Trona. Lunch is going to be forced to commit out his self-destruct though, and won't get much for it because of him's transcendence, and now DeToNator still have more resources to use. So again, unless Talon can convert some crazy kills here, they're going to be really struggling as they do start converting them through. With Small Pond out of the picture, they should be able to secure themselves a back
good
follow-up. Bump as well to get Mui. They're going to secure this one.
Well played by DeToNator, absolutely. Just kind of picking out DeToNator apart. Just a couple of kills here and there, that's all they really need. And DeToNator, they've got to go into full desperation mode pretty soon. They look like they will eventually give this up, but they don't have a lot of time to play with. A staggered kill into Yuri as well. I mean, they don't even have time to wait for Yuri. Now they just have to get on the point. Sure.
Because the cap went over in that time, they're just going to have to go for it. And someone's got to touch it. There we go, finally getting Esso on, but he may lose his life for it. Moving in with the EMP, which is decent, but they need to get pressure on to convert kills. Good stick will do it as they start to convert the rest. And they were able to cut off Hanji and Small Pond on their way to the point, but that was not enough as Esso again just running rampant here. He and Mui diving dream team here as they get the cap back for themselves. Now it's DeToNator in the same position.
Absolutely, it is just kind of trading, but DeToNator are kind of a little bit more comfortable because they get to wait for all their full respawns. They're coming in with, I would like to say, better ultimates. All DeToNator really had was a pulse bomb and an EMP. Luckily, or really fortunately, both of them worked out extremely well.
Yeah, all Talon really have to work with is this tactical visor, and Lunch may get a self-destruct if this fight goes on long enough, but a good pick onto him. Oh, it's Esso converts onto Trona as well. Raphael goes down, and Small Pond uncontested enough with this visor. They're actually going to do this, despite all the ultimates DeToNator had at their disposal. It's really now just Bexel alone on this point, stalling out with the ultimate. And honestly, they're just kind of staggering into this one. The members of Talon are still too numerous, and unless Trona gets a crazy contested, no, he is not. Talon are actually going to do it. Pick themselves up the first snap, looking good.
Absolutely. I think Talon have a lot of strengths, particularly in their offensive kind of plays. They're really able to get in quickly, find targets easily, and able to pick apart on DeToNator on a lot of different fronts. I think for DeToNator, they seem to me at least a little bit more like a slightly more calculated team. I noticed that their ultimate rotations, ultimate economy usage was generally a bit better than Talon's. Talon definitely misplayed on a few of those fronts. I think overall, Talon had the bigger obvious mistakes. They had the bigger obvious misplays, which were greatly punished by DeToNator. But overall, Talon made more. They took advantage and they had the better initiative in terms of finding the plays and finding the opportunities to take apart DeToNator, which DeToNator kind of just, unfortunately, just had to take the brunt of it.
Yeah, and I would also say confidence or lack thereof is really hurting DeToNator, and I did kind of touch on it there. The moments where they did have confidence, they were looking good and things were working out. The moments where they didn't, Talon were able to capitalize on that, and a lot of that I feel was actually just down to Esso and Mui, the way they play it, how aggressive they go. I mean, naturally, shaky confidence is going to be punished by aggressive DPS players, and they've really got the backup in the tanks. I mean, that's just kind of a given. So, honestly, DeToNator, if they have that extra confidence, should be able to punish what Talon are doing, but if they continue playing like this, then Talon are just going to keep whitewashing.
I think Toronto on the DeToNator side has had a pretty great run so far, despite, even if DeToNator overall have had some pretty rough moments. Toronto has usually been the person to kind of bring it back for Talon, bring it back for DeToNator, or at least push DeToNator very far ahead. Whereas when you look at Raphael, he's had some couple of good moments, but he has been pushed out a lot as well. He's had to really just take it head on, the aggression coming out from both Mui and also Esso, and then on top of that, you've also got Hanji, who's just really sitting on top of Raphael. The way he has to play is extremely difficult, and for a team that wants to play the sort of Tracer Soldier kind of gameplay, they have struggled, at least on the Soldier department. The Tracer side has been quite good, but the Soldier, unfortunately, no. So
yeah, absolutely. And also, Hanji has actually done a really good job of backing up these DPSs. And that's what I mean when I say, the support of the tank. As much as it is a given, actually, Hanji is executing it just ever so slightly better than what DeToNator are doing between the two of their tanks.
All right, well, we're going to go to a quick break pretty soon as we get prepared for map number 2, which is going to come up very soon. And that is, I believe it's going to be DeToNator Korea's pick, as they were the loser. The next map will be on Hybrid. We'll find out what it is after this. Welcome back to the OPC Season 2 qualifiers, and we've had one map go down so far. DeToNator Korea versus Talon Esports, who picked up Lijiang Tower, and now it will be Hybrid, and it will be DeToNator Korea's pick. Yeah,
already quite an interesting start off, I feel. More in terms of, I think it's quite apparent what may limit both of these teams, but the fact that this is a best of 5 means that teams get space and time to adapt, and I would say, even though they lost it so far, DeToNator Korea have already showed signs of doing that. I'm now quite excited to see how they adapt further into Hybrid.
I would like to see that as well, because I have some questions regarding Talon moving forward into the other maps. I think, by the way, the map pick has come up, and it is Kings Road, picked by DeToNator, of course, and moving into a map like Hybrid, the first thing to note is for DeToNator Korea, their Soldier Tracer gameplay should improve, being that Raphael should get a lot more room to play with. He should feel a lot safer versus a control map like Lijiang. Then you look at the other side as well. Mui came into this tournament, my knowledge of Talon Esports was that Mui was going to be the main Tracer player. Today, so far, that's been Esso. And Esso, to my knowledge, has been the main Soldier player. We haven't seen him on that yet so far, so I don't know whether they're going to change it. If Talon want to run Soldier Tracer, who's going to play it? Does Esso suddenly, does he remain the Tracer, and does Mui go on the Soldier?
You wonder.
That's not something I've seen yet, but some things could still change for the team.
Yeah, and certainly we haven't actually seen Soldier Tracer between those two. We have seen Soldier Tracer on that team, but it was with the Sombra, and Small Pond was on the Soldier, with Mui being the Sombra. So it could actually just be that when they want Sombra, it has to be Mui. When they want Genji, it has to be Mui. So the only option left is for Esso to be on the Tracer. So it could be that that's the case. Could be that this has just been a change-up since they've played previously. So really hard to say. And again, because these guys are relatively unknown across the board, actually, again, there isn't a lot of data to kind of pull from this. They could well be still sounding out what works for them.
Yeah, I have a bit of a hypothesis here, and that is that Esso doesn't play the Genji, because I know that Mui, from my previous knowledge, had both Tracer and Genji within his hero pool, and with Esso, I knew he had Soldier within his hero pool, but not necessarily Genji. And if they do want to run Tracer Genji, it does make sense that Esso does in fact play the Tracer, and then Mui picks up the Genji part of that. So that's kind of how that dynamic works, and if that is the case, how do Talon then try and change things up if they want to try different compositions, or are they stuck on Tracer Genji?
Yeah, which is an absolute absolute key thing here. I think you're completely right. And again, look over the course of a best of 5 where the other team is going to be figuring out what you can and can't do and trying to adapt to it. Anything that even slightly limits your team, especially compositionally, can start to become a really, really huge weakness. But interestingly, once again, it is going to be moving on that Sombra here for the defense. ESO onto that Tracer, though this time they are going to be subbing off one of the DPSs for that Sombra. This is a little bit more conventional for Hybrid.
Yeah, definitely more conventional, especially when you know you're likely, or you should be preparing for that sort of streets phase anyway, but running Sombra to start things off with the Cap 1 on King's Row, I'm going to say that's a little bit rare because it's not something that a lot of teams do.
Yeah, and it does force DeToNator into a slightly slower push though. They're on this low ground, which is maybe potentially going to be a bit of a misfire, but they kind of have to commit to it for now, so they're going to try and make it work anyway. Trying to get the pressure on the front side. They are really getting a lot of good damage, especially onto Mui, who's going to have to retreat a long way back from his health pack. Yuri as well, getting pressure off the top side. Oh dear! Trying to wrap around the back. Not sure what he was doing there. Maybe forced off the high ground as they're trying to get more pressure on Esso. Really trying to convert onto these healers, but he's struggling. They're on lockdown. They've got members here protecting them, and yeah, picking Mui as well. They're just able to open right up on this one as Esso completely picked out as well. They do get a little bit in terms of response kills there, but it's not going to be anywhere near enough. DeToNator are very well set up here, and Bexel is close enough to the respawn that I don't think Talon should contest this at all. That is indeed what they're doing. Maybe they could look for the bookshop.
DeToNator were very calculated there. They were very patient, as is their playstyle so far across the 2 maps that we have seen. And slightly, a little bit, in my opinion, too patient because they got a lot of damage on Yuri. They pushed out a bunch of other players. So Hanji was kind of locked up. They had the opportunity to go a little bit more aggressive there, but they were always very careful about running into Esso. They had a lot of respect towards Esso, making sure that Esso was never going to run them over.
Yeah, and again, they made that low ground push actually work for them despite initially kind of running into resistance. And honestly, Talon didn't really make much use of the high ground. There's the EMP out from them, needing to convert fast, but Hanji just ends up too deep trying to convert. Esso throws out the pulse bomb, but it's completely wide, and now they lose their second tank. They lose the mech from him. And they aren't really getting anything in response to this one. Having to use a few ultimates to get the payload underway, but DeToNator will be happy to use those because the payload is indeed underway.
And this Sombra so far is not really paying dividends for Talon. It's about time that I would consider maybe for Mui to swap off this and go into something like Genji. Something where Talon is a little bit more comfortable when playing aggressive. The EMP, unfortunately, didn't do enough work for Talon. It kind of reminded me of the situation we saw on Control Center the first time where EMP came out. Maybe it was good, maybe it wasn't, but the rest of Talon weren't able to successfully dive onto DeToNator, pick up the kills. And for DeToNator, they just had to play patient again, roll themselves back a little bit, find out who's extended on the Talon side, and get those players down. Start to play with your player advantage after that.
Now having to get aggressive again. They're the ones using the ultimates first, which I find interesting. Mui doesn't have the EMP though, so we can't really counter it out. Talon have to use everything they have as well. No kills either way just yet, but the healer's getting pressured out. If Nakiyev loses his life, they're in trouble, but they do at least convert onto small pond before that happens, so DeToNator still with a good opportunity to pressure out, and Esso stuck off to the side, going to go down as well. Means actually they should be able to sort this one out.
Yeah, and the EMP here is not really going to do a lot because there's not enough players here for Talon to really take advantage, so we're already looking to concede the second phase already. The streets is gone, and for Talon, I don't think they've actually settled and stabilized on a single defense. The first cap was a very difficult situation where they could never really aggress in time for their entire composition to work. They didn't have EMP. They had EMP for streets, couldn't get enough kills off that. Now we're already onto the third cap. This next EMP has got to be the one that works.
Yeah, 3 fights and 3 losses for Talon so far. You're completely right. And unless this EMP comes up big, they won't get much again. Esso trying to go deep, but he's already down. They do at least trade back onto him, and they get some conversions through now. Trona does swing one back, but it's not going to be enough to actually keep the fight alive. We are also just naturally closer to Talon's respawns here, so this would start to favor them a little bit if it was a really back and forth fight, but converting all the kills up now has been Talon. DeToNator are starting to pile back in, and actually, yeah, Talon didn't really continue on the payload. They didn't really keep the pressure on and stop the DeToNator members from respawning and coming in, so now they're going to have to try and clean up this fight again, but DeToNator are busy trying to keep this one underway, so easier said than done now. Talon just getting continually pressured back now, and they seem to have lost all sense of coordination, losing Hanji off the back end, and now Lunch the only tank left to contest, and they're struggling. They're going to have to trickle on to this final fight.
Esso still into the back lines, and he doesn't have enough to play with. It's not like he's got a false bomb or anything. Trona's ready to go with his, and we've got ultimates being committed by Talon here already.
Small Pond on the complete wrong side of that after his Transcendence ran out, did not regroup with his own team. Esso finally catching one through onto Raphael, who runs it back into him as well. And that should be a basis for stabilization here as they've caught Vexel off on the backside of this. Also catching out Trona as well. Will be a retreat up from Ivar. Actually, Esso trying to catch him on the other side. Will work. Now they can just kind of leave the pet Diva, who is going to take a dive. They've finally found a point to stabilize, but that was very, very rough.
Right in the last couple of inches, in the last few meters before the cart sort of goes over there, Mui going to his third hero of the map so far, going to stick onto the Genji. This is definitely now within, I would say, the comfort zone of what we've seen from Talon so far. They can play the same playstyle they had on Lijiang, which was very successful against DeToNator, but they are going to have a slightly harder time getting towards Raphael. Being that this is not control, this is King's Row.
Yeah, also Yuri off the Ana over onto the Lucio, and Small Pond back on the Ana now, no Zenyatta for them. But DeToNator, no changes here, and why indeed would you? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as they get aggressive again and already picked Mui. It's a great dive there. Pulse Bomb kind of tossed in a leisurely way, and already getting pressured out is Esso. Needs to be careful and retreat there, but they catch him, so actually DeToNator may just need a retreat here, give themselves a bit more space as they try and deal with Hanji. Struggling to pick him right off here, actually, as he's going to be able to regroup, and yeah, they're going to go back and wait it out.
I think that's probably the correct move to make here. You play against a Primal Rage, you don't have to choose to play against Talon's entire team as well. Wait out the Primal Rage, now go back in with a Primal Rage of your own. You've got an ultimate advantage as well. DeToNator have done well to consistently set up advantages economically in terms of ult, so that's their biggest strength they need to leverage.
Trona unfortunately a little wide on the Pulse Bomb, but Raphael and Ivar converting the kills anyway, and Lunge finding nothing, and also loses Ignite's life, so now they're just kind of lacking a tank. No ult here for Hanji either, as this Nano Boost is finding nothing. Mui didn't have the blade up yet. Vexel may lose his life here, but honestly they've got the kills through anyway, and he's actually able to retreat as Hanji goes diving deep. Now Raphael uncontested with this tac visor. That block from Lunge did absolutely nothing to him. Pulse Bomb on the payload. Even that doesn't find anything with that Transcendence out. And they're just needing to clean up these last few kills here now. The respawns do flood out the base here for Talon, but they are staggered and scattered. And unless these two tanks can work a miracle, this is going to be a cap over to Talon, DeToNator rather, with plenty of time in the bank actually.
The Nano did feel kind of panicked. It did feel a little bit desperate because what Talon were trying to bank on there is put the Nano onto Mui. He's going to get the Dragon Blade in the middle of the Nano and then convert onto the Nano directly after or during the last few moments of the Nano Blade. So you kind of overlap, or rather not overlap, but just transfer the ultimates over directly from the Nano onto the Dragon Blade.
Or even just use the extra damage to get that last bit towards your ultimate as the Genji.
Which is exactly the game plan, except it didn't really work out for Talon, and they went for the risky play. It's not really a risky play, but they went for the play with an expected result. They didn't get the result they wanted. Unfortunately for Mui, he kind of got shut down, came back later on after getting the Dragon Blade, but it's in a sort of position where already for Talon, they're just so far behind. They're being staggered out now. And for a team like DeToNator, overall, across the entire attack for them, that was far cleaner. They played a very stable, safe kind of game. You could clearly see the decision making there, and there was a lot of method to what they were doing, and it was quite obvious.
And on top of that as well, look, Raphael was just so uncontested for the majority of time, and I really think the Sombra pick kind of hurt Talon a lot there. They weren't really able to contest the backliners of DeToNator, which they really needed to do. They were looking a little bit better at doing that with the Genji Tracer, but again, when it really counted, unfortunately, DeToNator were already in such a favorable position. It's actually hard, even though you are the defender, Talon, it's really hard to crack that soldier because you still have to dive past his team and the payload to get onto him.
And part of that is because you see that Raphael and the rest of DeToNator actually they played defensively in situations where I kind of felt like they needed to be a bit more aggressive, where they had openings, they had advantages that they could take advantage of, but they gave a lot of respect to players like Esso. Understand, look, Esso's still behind us. He could flank us at any time. We don't want to take the risk here. A lot of teams would take the risk, and I probably agree with those teams. But this isn't one of those teams. And Mui getting a
entry frag, boys.
A rare entry frag, actually, because not a lot of teams get that.
He was actually just trying to sound out as well. He was going to maybe use the scatter and then the Sonic in case he got a lucky frag. And then Esso converting straight away. Yes, snowball indeed. Mui going to get deeply aggressive now. Forces him off that high ground, and there's no one left up on it. So Talon, in even faster time than DeToNator, will cap this first point.
Not quite, not if DeToNator have anything to say about it. I think DeToNator is setting up for a retake here, and they've got all their members available now.
They've got to go.
Half health, but they're going for it.
Mui is already going to try and cut off any support to come in. Unfortunately, misses the strike in onto Yuri, and onto him rather, but the rest of the team is going to deal with it anyway, and Esso still putting the pressure down. Trona does convert one onto the back line, but DeToNator are indeed scattered here as the Healer's just getting hunted around here, and the rest of the members are getting pressured out by Talon. Yeah, still finally. But in any case, the point was capped is what really counts, and I believe that was just slightly faster than DeToNator's time.
Yeah, the point went over, but it was 3v3, which is interesting because both teams lost equal amounts of members there. I think Mui, despite not picking up the kills at all, played the situation well in terms of area control. He blocked out supports, he forced supports to turn around and deal with them instead of being with their actual team. So DeToNator were very spread apart where they didn't want to be in that phase.
And Esso, like, he saw the toenail of Raphael and just ran. He's like, nah, nothing to do with that.
The biggest thing that hurt DeToNator was actually not losing Nukyop early to the arrow, but losing Tronos right afterwards.
Well, speaking of Trono, very aggressive play out of DeToNator, totally paying off as well as they catch Esso. Now backing up as well to try and draw Talon out, and it indeed works as Mui gets picked, and now they're able to go on the aggressive again. Smallpot, unfortunately, picking out Raphael there, but they should be able to retreat out from this one nice and safe, have the Transcendence if things do really get dire, but they are not going to, and that's a really good hold there for a moment by DeToNator.
It is definitely not, losing Raphael actually affects DeToNator in a much bigger way than I think a lot of people would consider, because Raphael's got a much longer respawn distance, and so for DeToNator, they didn't want to lose anyone. I think that's kind of a given, but you especially don't want to lose anyone when you're that close to the attacker's spawn.
Well, now again, Talon going to have to try and break apart this one, but DeToNator had the ultimates to commit to it. They've absorbed the first few now, and with the sound barrier, want to try and get aggressive and convert, but Trona is in behind them, so they need to be careful how they do so. And again, unable to dislodge Raphael here, who is just very much holding down the fort for his team. Good self-destruct by Lunch, but there aren't really the members here to convert this one over, so unless Esso pulls out a miracle, they're really going to struggle here.
And this is a really important cleanup for DeToNator, because if they allow Talon to get any footing here, they don't have an opportunity to wait for their respawns, and now DeToNator have kind of won this next fight, forced Talon back, their respawns get to come back and play. In fact, they're still even just backing off, a lot of respect being given to Talon here. They don't want to play into Talon at all. They're going to have to eventually, because
here we go.
Coming out. Talon want to play into you.
I was going to say, I think it's a respect being given to the EMP, and actually they react to it well there by just kind of leaving Mui too deep. He is going to commit it, but honestly, the rest of the members of DeToNator had already been elsewhere on the team, routing out the rest of Talon, who were now kind of scattered and struggling. And again, Raphael struggling to get dislodged here by Lunch. So he's just happy to sit tight, pump shots into anyone who approaches him. And while Talon are busy trying to take him out, they're not actually playing the payload itself.
Absolutely not, and DeToNator can go into the counter-attack here.
Oh, good.
Another EMP. That was a very quick EMP from Mui.
That wasn't the EMP, that was just a... Oh, no,
it was the EMP.
Totally wow, you're completely right. I thought that was just a right-click hack, but never mind, you're completely right. And that just gave Talon what they needed, I think, to get this one back underway. That was very, very clutch, but very, very important.
Exactly. I think DeToNator were even quite surprised by how quickly the EMP came up, because something we noticed is they played with a lot of respect against the EMP last time. They backed off quite early, and a lot of teams might not have actually done that, but for a team like DeToNator, they just saw it coming this time without knowing the EMP was there. You can see how effective the EMP suddenly becomes.
One thing that does hurt Talon, though, a little is they are scattering a lot when they try and back away from fights, and that actually makes it quite easy to catch and route. But in any case, on the aggression is where they look most comfortable, as they throw the self-destruct in to give them space to play with, and it's space they use to knock out Ivar's mech, get pressure onto Fexel as well, and the Transcendence cannot save that Winston. Smallpot had already committed his rather, but the kills were converted during said Transcendence, and Ivar unable to get back into the mech. Good kill by Mui there. And now that it's back underway, Talon don't seem to be keen to get stopped up again.
No, this is every time. I think Talon have really. This has been one of the few fights where. Did they actually use the EMP there? I'm struggling to keep track of what those...
They did. It was up very quickly.
So the EMP has been extremely effective now for Talon when DeToNator don't have the option of just backing up. DeToNator can either back off there or they can play the card, and you got to play the card because you've got to try and stop the cap from going over. And unfortunately, you get punished by the EMP really hard.
Yeah, and once again now, Esso on the aggression is actually really dislodging Raphael. He's not dead. Oh, now he's dead to the stick. I was going to say he's not dead, but he's getting pressured out. He's not affecting the fight, and that was still true anyway, now more so with him being not alive. But unfortunately, Mui having to back out and Esso having to back off for a moment will give him time to respawn. They convert onto Bexel in that time, though, so now they can keep the aggression going. Ooh, did not want to use the EMP just yet, but he's poised to use it any minute now, Mui.
Yeah, you did scare DeToNator, though. There it is, yep.
Any minute indeed. And oh, look at the aggression there. Great self-destruct to just catch out so many. And DeToNator already going to be scattered as they come in for the respawns. Dying despite the sound barrier there is Ivar, because he was bumped off the edge. And Talon now with the payload on lockdown, marching it towards the end. DeToNator very scattered in their contest, more so than Talon were, and that means they actually roll it through to the end with more time in the bank.
It's an interesting dynamic between both of these teams because where I think Talon was struggling earlier on their own attack was DeToNator kind of team where they're happy to bait you into themselves. They're happy to disengage. In fact, they're one of the teams that can disengage extremely cleanly.
Yeah.
They see Talon coming in, they say, come in. We'll pick up Hanji, we'll pick up Mui, we'll pick up whoever wants to get really deep into this engagement, and they consistently are able to do that. But the mind games from Talon definitely start to take effect, and right at the end there is a good example because Mui goes in threatening the EMP, and we already know DeToNator respect the EMP a lot. In fact, they respect every single engage
because
out
they
of
have
Talon with just everything. They don't want to. They never want to overcommit. They never want to overstep their boundaries here. So for Mui, he doesn't have to use EMP. He runs in there, just says, "Hi, I've got this," and suddenly DeToNator they run, they scatter, and Mui saves the EMP, allows the rest of Talon to just get in, get the better positioning, pressure out DeToNator, and then suddenly Mui can come in when he wants the EMP, and DeToNator are caught off guard.
Yeah, exactly. It is respect being given to the EMP, you're right, which is absolutely the correct thing to do, but it's also not actually playing around it. It's just kind of being afraid of it and backing off. It's letting the pressure, like you said, do exactly what Talon are actually set out to do. And now with a lesser time on the clock, it's going to be DeToNator attacking first, much like they did in the initial run. No entry frag from Nakyup.
Yep, definitely not. And I also think that could have been a very different first camp had Mui not gotten the entry frag. But it's a lot of what ifs and could have beens, unfortunately.
Already on the point here is DeToNator, so they're again trying to pressure Talon into them, and you're right, it seems to be very characteristic of their play. They do need to be careful with how they set up Raphael. He is on the low ground, and Talon do actually have members on the high ground. They don't have a soldier specifically, but that is where the healers are. So they've got good sightlines down to the ground here as they try and keep Hanji topped off. Not going to work. Yep. That's the opening now for DeToNator. A third of the point already, so it can be a fight lost, and they can just kind of come back in, but they've got the members in anyway. Talon are really struggling to actually aggress onto this one. These flankers aren't really picking anyone. They're just kind of running around, throwing down shots. Yeah, wasn't even able to commit it, and possibly that is for the better. You're right, and this will actually just end up being a cap going over to DeToNator. Talon just want to run down the clock now if they can.
I think Talon, unfortunately, or I want to say Talon made the same mistake, but rather DeToNator just played the situation perfectly. Again, they played extremely slow. They just slow pushed and deathballed their way onto the cap itself, and for Talon, because they don't have their soldier, DeToNator don't actually have to go into the high ground. They don't have to try and blow the soldier out of the water. They just got to go move forward, try and punish Talon slowly, and eventually you do.
And now this is where Talon actually struggled last time. As much as they finished with more time than DeToNator, they didn't actually get a defense until right at the end of the third point. Like, we're talking within meters of the cap, right? That was where they ran down all that time. Whereas DeToNator held up Talon a lot earlier. So if Talon don't take an early fight and actually stop the payload now, they're going to end up giving a lot of ground.
This EMP could decide the entire time bank, I think, so far for Talon, because most of their engages that they've won have been off the back of a good EMP. If they do not get a good one, there it is.
Ooh,
count it out. Yep.
That's great. And Esso was trying to get into the backside of Ivar, but he just wasn't able to, and now DeToNator are looking fine and dandy on this one. Lunch does convert one onto Ivar. Actually, now Esso getting aggressive. They've given him the nano boost because why not? And it's working. Trona in a lot of trouble. He did have to blink, but he is going to at least live with that. Bexel, really the last member trying to keep this on lockdown so that the respawns can come in. Talon aren't actually converting these
respawns
extra kills
favor
now.
DeToNator.
Yeah, respawns do favor DeToNator indeed, and now Talon are actually struggling to keep their members alive here as Small Palm is pressured out the backside. Losing Lunch is big, and Raphael, if he can stay uncontested, another EMP, but they're not actually converting off this one. It's DeToNator with the reinforcements who are, and Hanji is going to have to hold this one down for his team, much like Bexel did a moment ago, if they want to get their own respawns in, or they're just going to give up more payload.
I think for Talon, they need to take a page out of DeToNator's book, because when you got to give respect to the team, you got to give it to them, and the EMP was not respect. You put the EMP out, where were your teammates? You were never going to get kills in that situation, and DeToNator are definitely taking advantage of this.
That's so huge. That gives DeToNator this cap as well. And this is exactly what I was saying was a liability for Talon. Now, they are not going to get an opportunity to defend on the second half of the Streets phase either, and they're giving so much payload distance.
If Talon continue with this EMP, they're absolutely at risk of being fully capped out, because DeToNator have played against EMP so well so far, at least into this time bank. Him did an extremely good job of countering the EMP directly with the transcendence of their own. Losing Trona early, that could definitely hurt them though.
That's very important as they convert onto Bexel as well. Esso once again just kind of pushing the go button. Raphael opens out with the visor, but a lot of it's just getting blocked up. Even with that sound barrier, he's finally able to convert one onto Mui, and catching Lunch's mech is good. It stops the dive from being too effective now, as actually they lose Mui as well. They're really struggling on this, sorry, lose Lunch rather. now able to get the continued motion. Talon, they just don't seem to be able to push the go button.
Talon have one more chance. I think, you know, the EMP is definitely their biggest tool here. And they're playing into Transcendence again. If Hin pulls off another big counterplay, this is over.
Again, he's just going to go aggressive on it, which means Transcendence out now from Small Pond as they try and convert, and this time they're finally able to give Esso the room to breathe with the early pick on Raphael, looking much stronger for it. Between him and Hanji, they do finally stop up the payload. Amazing, isn't it? The difference between DeToNator with Raphael alive and DeToNator with Raphael dead.
And also the difference between him able to read the EMP with the Transcendence and then not. You see there him getting picked out, or rather caught out by the EMP, which is an easy thing to do. It's extremely difficult for the Zenyatta play to say, this is exactly when the EMP is coming out, this is exactly when I'm going to Transcendence, and also the Transcendence will not be wasted because he's definitely going to use the EMP and not going to hold it. So for him, he got it off one time, and the one time he did get it off, it was effective, and he was able to save his team. In a time-based scenario where it matters so much, the second time around, had he got that Transcendence, this could have been a full cap out from DeToNator. That would be extremely scary. The fact that they didn't cap out, you see where the distance was anyway. This is kind of nigh impossible for for Talon to push on through anyway.
It is effectively a cap, you're right, and it is actually exactly the same as what happened to them on DeToNator's initial attack. Like, they didn't really get a chance to dig in their feet and defend until the very end. Now, sure, that might be fine and dandy outside of Time Bank, but when you're in Time Bank, you've got to play to Time Bank, and if you can't win a fight until the end of the map, you make it harder for yourself. And given that they were stocked up early by DeToNator on their own offense, they actually now have the tougher road ahead of them.
And by the way, Mui wanted to commit the EMP directly on the first cap, despite the fact that his team was entirely dead. So we kind of mentioned, but it's better that he died before it could come out, because if had he used it, I mean, they would have had a much more difficult Streets phase.
Yeah, no entry frag this time from Mui, and he is back onto the Genji as well.
This is a real DeToNator defense now. You don't have that entry frag advantage.
Yeah, so let's see how quickly they can dislodge Raphael, because like I said, difference between DeToNator with and DeToNator without is stark.
DeToNator did actually do, I'm going to say for Lijiang that they did pretty decent even without Raphael.
Oh, good dive onto him and Raphael as well. So there you go. There's DeToNator properly set up, and the only thing they've actually got is a quick headshot onto Hanji, and that's really not too much for them, as Ivar going to get demexed and then taken out as well. So a similarly fast cap out of Talon here.
You almost consider, you know, what if Talon just ran Genji the entire time, because this has been their best composition with the best overall consistent results. Mui on the Sombra has been hit or miss. It's been sometimes very effective. It's been sometimes directly hard counted. So for Talon, I think they just got to keep playing this. Definitely hang up the Sombra gun, hang up the hacking glove for now, and just play this.
Yeah, and again, look at how quickly Mui and Hanji, also Esso contributing, were able to take out Raphael and dislodge him. If they could do that more often, I could see these games going very, very differently. But here's the aggression now from DeToNator to try and stop up the payload early. It may work out for them, and indeed does, picking Small Pond. Talon just back off a little bit, but it's not really late enough in the time for them to actually stop up Talon.
I think DeToNator had the goal of baiting out ultimates from Talon and that push on through, and for Talon to hold on to ults was very smart and well played by them. It does sort of prevent good card movement for the time being, which is also important for DeToNator to hold on to. You want to bleed this into the overtime as quickly as you can.
That is exactly what they managed to do this time around, though, with two ultimates being committed. They're starting to get the convert now as Mui goes deep. DeToNator maybe biting off a bit more than they could chew. They wanted to draw out ults and run down the clock, but they just end up giving away a lot of kills, which also means actually giving away a bunch more ult charges. Hanji and Lunch have managed to charge theirs up off that fight, so now Talon have the resources they need to try and snowball this one ahead.
And they might not have, but DeToNator, unfortunately, they committed the pulse bomb. I could see the sound barrier coming out, and that's okay. You want to be able to play the sound barrier, see if you can actually win with it. Unfortunately, no. You got the ultimates out of Talon. You wanted to build up your own ult economy, which you have now. You would have also have the pulse bomb that would have been 5 ultimates. DeToNator, great with the ult economy. It's still good, but it could have been better.
Absolutely could have been. They're really banking on something big out of someone like Ivar here. They do have a lot of resources, but very early Transcendence from him because Vexel was in a lot of trouble. Open up now from Raphael. Lunch converts onto him though, and that's a 1-for-1 between those two members. Talon still have what they need to go aggressive here, and Hanji plenty of stall tools, but they need to convert a few more quickly. Trying to get onto Trona. Mui is struggling though, and goes down as well. Great follow-up there by Ivar, and now they're trying to keep this one on lockdown on the aggressive here. Talon, they're really a small pond actually to keep it going for Talon, and well, you'll take it where you can get it.
I think they're going to continue this push on through. So well played so far. And Talon They've done extremely well considering this was a section of the map that was heavily unfavored for them in terms of respawn distances. DeToNator could have easily reinforced a lot quicker, and now it gets a little bit worse because we're into the last sort of stage. And for Talon, you want to sort of come on through with a really huge advantage, and they've got a decent
early aggression.
play with.
These are the ultimates they had at their disposal. They just used them straight away. They need
early.
to convert onto Raphael, and they're not actually finding him. He's onto the Genji, which is why they couldn't. But they are converting other ones through. Raphael, though, is doing the same in response. Picking Lunch's mech, and he's not actually been taken out. Shrona is just keeping pressure on, and they close out the last few. Suddenly, Talon find themselves worse for members. Despite the blinking red health bars, DeToNator do not go down. They hold on to their lives and are able to even up the score on King's Row.
That's a concerning situation for Talon because ideally you would have wanted to hold on to the ultimates as soon as you can to get it into a situation where on one usage of the ultimates, you do not fight a respawning wave of enemy players. You immediately get the cap on through. The fact that they used ultimates anyway, kind of early in the grand macro scheme of things, but on time, specifically considering the situation they were in, but still unable to get the clean out at the end of the day and get the win. That was just unfortunate.
I would ever so slightly dispute the on time. It was like milliseconds before on time because I don't actually feel they quite had the full read, and you could see that more specifically, or perhaps it was just the one member, but you could see that Mui was looking for Soldier beside the healers. Yeah,
he was looking. Forced.
Yeah. And of course, Raphael was on the Genji, so not having had that full read of, oh, they've made a swap actually cost them. Because honestly, if it had have been the Soldier still, then probably what Mui did would have paid off. And if they had have read that Raphael was on Genji, maybe they would have played it a bit differently, or maybe he would have actually been looking for the right targets. But either way, what they did was a lot of what cost them in that final fight. And it was, these really marginal kind of things. That being said, in a way, I wasn't expecting them to get the payload as far as they did, given how early they got most of their time run out on their initial push. So actually props to Talon for getting that far, but there are still some very serious, very concerning holes in their defense, given how far DeToNator got it with just over a minute.
I did want to bring up the defense because when we really compare the two teams to go out on a limb, Talon to me had the much better attack overall. Despite Talon not getting the full cap on out, they didn't get the distance, but they executed their attack a lot better. You can see DeToNator struggled a lot more on their defense. Now, where DeToNator won wasn't that they had a great attack. I think Talon just had a really awful defense that really cost them. So that's kind of bringing Talon down. Now the scoreline has kind of tied up 1-1. Now we're going to go into map number 3 pretty soon. But first, we're going to go into a very quick break. So we'll find out what map 3 is right after this. Thank you for sticking through the break with us as we're about to head into map number 3 of the OPC Season 2 qualifier. Starting out with match 1, it is Talon Esports versus DeToNator Korea. 1-for-1 so far. Good showing by Talon on the initial Lijiang. Then we had a little bit of a turnaround. Still a close map on the King's Row, but teams, I would say, it does look evenly matched so far.
It kind of does, yeah.
For different reasons also.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said different reasons, because I was just about to say it's kind of like it's evenly matched in terms of, look, both teams have strengths and both teams have weaknesses, and they're completely mismatched. Like, it's not like one strength is the other's weakness. They're just in these completely sideways kind of areas. Yeah, so it depends on the specific situation, like where they happen to be standing at that particular moment seems to be determining a lot about like which team is playing to their strengths and which is falling prey to their weaknesses. And again, sometimes it's like both at the same time as well. And I think Assault is going to be very interesting for that, because one of the things we were just kind of noting is Talon do seem to be a bit off, I guess, on the defense. They don't seem as comfortable as they do on the offense.
At the same time, they've been trying to make Sombra work across the entire evening, and now they pick what is arguably the most Sombra dominated map in the entire game, Volskaya Industries. So that definitely favors Talon in the sense of what they want to do.
It's because she's friends with the president of it. That's why it's so favored for her, because like the president... Also, the game is actually rigged because of President Volskaya.
Also, it's Talon, of which Reaper and Widowmaker work for Talon.
Wow.
So, I mean, there it is.
I'm actually now disappointed that there hasn't been a Widow and Talon in every single one.
And a
Widow and Reaper, sorry.
Which, by the way, we're on the current patch, so Reaper is the buffed Reaper version, so there it is.
I actually, I saw one Reaper for healers comp the other day, and I'm disappointed to say I did lose to it. He just healed so much. I didn't know what to do. It wasn't quick play. It wasn't quick play. So I was able to blame my team. It was fine. But yeah,
just hard counted by one Ana. But
one purple boy. Who would win? Anyway, Well, I already know who would win, not me. So, Volskaya Industries, this is interesting as well because I think defensively it favors what Talon have been trying to do. They do actually look really good when they're able to execute the dive. The only tricky thing is they seem to struggle when they're diving a soldier, and a lot of that is because of the lack of Genji, and they lack a Genji because they've often been running a Sombra. So I kind of want to see them run a Genji and a Sombra and a Tracer here, and sub out one of their healers.
Yes, very specific way to play indeed. Definitely a lot of options.
I want to see them run a Reaper and 4 healers.
I'm actually more interested in DeToNator's approach because so far DeToNator and Talon have attacked quite staggeringly differently. So Talon, they've attacked quite aggressive. They've got coordinated dive, especially when they're playing the Genji as well. They're definitely able to pick up targets, able to access the backline. And then you got the sort of DeToNator side where they play their attacks very patiently, go for the setup plays. They go for small advantages, really pressure you out from an area control, kind of positional control kind of method of pushing forward. So both teams just got such different playstyles.
Absolutely, and I'm interested to see how they kind of come out the gate on this one. It is indeed going to be Talon running their triple DPS, but they're going to be running the Soldier. No Genji inside here, so they're going to have to be very deeply entrenched on this one. Need to not let DeToNator get too set up themselves as well. Trying to do so with Hanji, but they weren't quite able to convert out. Vexel in a bit of trouble, but actually it's Lunch getting aggressive on, and Talon, they need to hold what ground they have now because DeToNator have set up the way they want, and indeed, Lunch is able to retreat, but the follow-up is there from Vexel, and between him and Trona, they are able to get the pressure down. No response pressure from Talon, and now Talon are going to be drawn out onto this point, whether they like it or not.
Lunch is exactly what I say if I forget to bring my wallet to work. But,
oh dear. But now actually, all of DeToNator. So that was a very conveniently timed EMP. They still haven't actually dislodged Raphael, but they're not going to be able to get more pressure on the point itself here, DeToNator, and now Raphael needs to be careful that he doesn't get too hard pressured.
Oh, yeah, he does get knocked out, so I think it actually helps him because I'm sort of in a position where Raphael should kind of back up anyway. He needs to regroup with his team. He's at the risk of actually getting collapsed upon by the rest of the Talon members. And now DeToNator, if they can actually move quickly here, maybe they can get on an aggressive play before Talon fully regroup in time.
The only thing with what DeToNator are trying to do is they do very much rely on getting close to a full team wipe on Talon before they can really commit properly to the point, just because they're trying to set up Raphael on high ground first and keep him alive and then convert after getting fragged.
That's a big thing.
That's huge. That's going to be no clutch last minute EMP. He does have it, but he's going to have to take a long walk to get back into this fight as they kill Hanji as well. No defensive ultimates available for Talon. Is now Lunch. Lunch once again. They've lost their Lunch, and Smallpond the only ultimate available. I think smart to hold on to it certainly, but it will be a cap going over to DeToNator in pretty spectacular fashion.
Talon should definitely be setting up for the second cap here. Definitely understand that A is already gone. It's not even the second third is gone, but you absolutely cannot go back onto this. Well, they're going to try.
They're really going for
okay,
it.
sure.
They have 2 ultimates for it, but they're not converting much. At least getting Raphael takes out one of the key ultimates here, but Vexel and Ivar can stall so much. Unless Talon convert a lot and fast, they're going to struggle, and the self-destruct forces them off the point for what could be the crucial seconds that they need to cap. And indeed, it's looking that way as they convert the kills off the back of it as well, and Talon throwing even more resources at it now. That was very poorly timed, to be frank, and they've now also wasted the resources they could have had on the defense. DeToNator booking it. They held on to all their ultimates. Let's see if they can just grab it quick.
This is about as fast as I've ever seen DeToNator move in the entire series so far. So Talon are still respawning. I mean, they're having to go May really early. They know they're going to desperation mode, and we're not even in the capping mode.
And here's the thing: Esso is spending all his time trying to dislodge Raphael, which means he wasn't actually finding the point. Luckily, though, the rest of the squad, Hanji especially, actually able to get onto the point and just disrupt DeToNator enough, who hadn't quite reacted in time. But we need to see Mui swap off this May as well, most likely. But maybe want to hold on to
that was a really surprising turn of events, kind of twofold, because for Talon, they shouldn't have tried to go for the recommit. They lost all their ultimates. They got a couple ultimates out of DeToNator, but charged a bunch more. And now for DeToNator to go in with such a huge advantage, positioning players also with ultimates to not come out on top. I mean, for the one time DeToNator don't play patiently, the one time DeToNator just rush in, it really falls apart.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, they were trying to set up for Raphael, but he didn't really have good sightlines to anyone, and they weren't really sure if they wanted to play the point or not, but now they're very sure about playing the point as they convert onto Hanji. Lunch is going to try and respond with the self-destruct, but it gets very... Oh, it doesn't get quite so answered, actually. We're still a little bit too high in the sky for Trona and Vexel, to react to it. That's a very, yeah, it's a cute self-destruct from Ivar, but a bit of a late commit there.
I think saving the sound barrier would have been important as well. DeToNator need to go for a regroup here. They should understand as soon as they lost members to Lunch's self-destruct, they were never going to be able to secure that cap.
Especially those two crucial divers there in Turner and Bethel.
And sound barrier is really one of their most important attacking ultimates because sustain is so important for attackers overall. You need to be able to out-sustain the defenders. That's really the only way you can get the cap on through. And for a team that is attacking and hasn't even got a 1/3 through, you're at a sort of stage where you're A, kind of running out of time, and B, well, you're not fully running out of time yet, but you've wasted a lot of time rather, and you still don't have a significant advantage over the defenders.
Yeah, and they've actually got to find a way to get past these ultimates as well. They're very significant ultimates.
Especially EMP.
Yeah, exactly. Him is going to have to try and survive that EMP as Trona needs to not lose his life as he gets flanked on the dive onto Esso. Meanwhile, Ivar is getting pressured out, and honestly, Talon are just kind of catching DeToNator while they're trying to set up, have finally started to read how this team aggresses.
And they're going to need to go for another reset here, which is really unfortunate for DeToNator. Just time is slipping away. We're nearly under 3 minutes, and the last time we checked, we were just in the 4, so 1 minute, no progress, no real kills here. You got a couple of ultimates charged, but you're still behind Talon at the end of the day. And you got to play around this EMP, so you haven't baited the EMP out, and it's just a lot to work against.
And you've really not got much more up this time than you did last time. Yeah, Pulse Bomb Eden. So they're going to be really relying on this tactical visor here as the Transcendence
Movie might die
out. Movie might indeed die. He does before he gets that off. So that's huge for them. They need to wait out Small Pond though. They are pressuring him a little bit. He does at least catch him with the extra help of Hanji there, but now finally getting aggressed on by Ivar. So they convert that one, and now Talon, they're a little bit scattered here as DeToNator should be able to set Raphael up. They need to actually get some time on the point. The self-destruct, rather, is going to give them the space to do that. Lunch, oh, actually, with the EMP out, they're going to try and regroup for this one. They finally take out Lunch, but they're going to have to now duck for cover, and they're still not actually on the point here, even as some kills are coming up their way, and now this fight may just be a little bit too even for their liking, especially if Ivar can't get back into this mech in a hurry. Talon do have the favored respawn, but
sound
with the
barrier's so good.
yeah, that should help them secure it now, as Talon do not quite fight through that last little bit of health, and DeToNator look poised to cap.
And you can see as soon as DeToNator get their setup, this is easily a cap out now. They went from 0 to what's about to be 100%. Hanji coming in for the final contest, not even going to get there in time for DeToNator. So clean, they absolutely play the ultimates well. Sound barrier coming in when it needed to be used. Raphael saving tech visor for the majority of that offensive play and only using it when he needs to. And something you notice about Raphael's tactical visor is he specifically uses it in situations where he waits for Yuri to demech, whether that's through a self-destruct or otherwise. Suddenly the tech visor comes out, even during the self-destruct. He picks out, Lunch. He picks out Lunch in the Baby Diva form and then hides from the self-destruct and continues to get damage output there. So for DeToNator Gold, a team that were kind of playing, they were sort of playing behind. Their biggest ticket was catching out Mui, and Mui, one thing I wanted to mention that I was sort of considering it was, picking out Mui was going to be a way for DeToNator to get in, because that's how they won the first cap in kind of convincing fashion. Mui just stood somewhere and oops, you got discorded, you lose your EMP, right back to the respawn room. Same thing happened again, and it really shouldn't have, because it's not something you can rely on.
And you make a good point actually about Raphael's use of the tactical visor, and he does still convert other kills or at least get other damage. That's the thing, right? Often we think of a good tactical visor as being one that gets like 3 kills, but even if you don't get those last few shots in to convert the kill, you still do the damage, right? So sure, you'll convert the kill onto the Baby Diva and then you duck for cover. With the last few seconds after you're out of cover, you can get extra damage down, and that's damage that your Winston can follow up on. That's the smart maneuvering of Raphael there, and part of why they seem to be struggling to kind of dislodge him is, once you throw that Diva out there with the self-destruct to try and force the space, to try and force the enemy team to retreat, actually you lose your one tool to really contest Raphael, aside from your own divers really getting onto him.
And now we're going to see Talon finally pick up Widowmaker. They've hired the right mercenary this time around.
Yeah.
Lunch is on the menu, and DeToNator are going to play their own Sombra. So something we haven't seen yet, Nakyup on the Sombra this time. Actually, him's going to be the one playing the Lucios. So kind of changes on both sides, which are going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, the Infrasight will really help them out here once they get it up as well, because they will just be able to straight up spot out the Sombra.
Talon are paying overtime to get both Winston and Tracer on their side, so that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, their pockets are very deep here.
A lot of peanut butter went into convincing Winston to work for Talon.
And I don't know, for Tracer, you just got to get her Christmas gifts. She's really slack with her Christmas shopping. Good dive though onto Lunch to try and contest him a little bit, but responded to, and now he's going to start opening back up. Not actually converting any kills though, which actually just means a lot of these DeToNator members are able to charge up Nakyup's ultimate.
And that hurts Talon a lot because the EMP should come out. I don't know, what is it? Okay, he got Hanji with it.
Yeah, very quick, and it was actually well enough timed as well. Half of Talon was still on the high ground because Hanji was setting up for them, and because of that, Hanji was kind of isolated when the EMP came down, so it wasn't like one of those really huge catches everyone and then they completely team wipe. Yeah, Infrasight very late in this one here, bit of an interesting commit, but yeah, the EMP was actually very significant in that fight.
All right, so Talon are going to go for round 2 now, and the reason I say, you know, Talon just kind of waiting for Lunch to get a pick there. I mean, you can't afford to wait. DeToNator are going to get the EMP, and they did. Now you got the pickups from Lunch, so this is where things start to really turn.
Yeah, finally, and they also convert onto Raphael as well. It took a lot of time, and SO even whiffed the ultimate to do it, but they actually converted through anyway. Just the pressure was enough to give him away from the fight, while Mui was going aggressive on the Winston. So, or getting aggressive on the Winston. He himself.
Something DeToNator weren't able to do is after getting the EMP, after picking up the early kill on the Hanji, converting to one other player, they couldn't clean up the rest of Talon. So Talon stayed. Lunch using Infrasight. He was able to sort of hide from the DeToNator members after seeing where they all are. And it's an interesting situation because usually an attacking team would fall back there, which is why the Infrasight did seem a little bit off. But Talon were able to resupply, reinforce their members, make use of the Infrasight while it was still up, and actually convert back on to Talon, onto DeToNator rather.
Yeah, opting to stick onto this as well, so they are a little bit hamstrung on the dive, and Hanji too deep there. Oh, they do get a good pick onto Trona, but you almost wish that had maybe happened in the other way round. They need to get a lot more picks to make this team comp worthwhile.
This is definitely not... the good news for Talon is if they can get Infrasight while the EMP is available, they can outplay the EMP, or at least have options to outplay the EMP, but that's only one thing.
Ooh.
They should probably go in now.
Yeah, that's a really good opportunity for them. Iso needs to not lose his life, and he catches Vexel. They convert onto Nakyup as well.
That's one way to counter it.
Didn't even need the Infrasight. Yeah, that's one way to counter it, is just kill the Sombra. Raphael really the only one able to do damage here, and he's only got one person with it, so now Talon themselves very set up on this point, much like DeToNator were when they cap through, and looking similarly poised to cap through as they just keep taking out these members here. A lot of members of DeToNator have ultimates to commit, as they do throughout the EMP, but they need to convert a lot of kills onto Talon. Actually, they are just getting a crucial few, as Talon aren't really able to get on the point enough to get even a third here, and now the respawns will start favoring DeToNator. They had to kind of throw everything and the kitchen sink at it, but Talon, the sink did hit them in the heads, and they are getting repelled.
And this is always the problem with running Widowmaker. Yes, you get the early pickups. Yes, you have the ability to find the Sombra of the other team. In fact, you kill the Sombra of the other team without even having the EMP come out and try and deflect you. And for Talon, you get set up. You get your members on the point. You don't cap out 1/3 because at that sort of stage, Widowmaker isn't having the impact anymore. Widowmaker still got another kill. Lunch managed to pick up him right at the end, but the respawns come out so quickly, eventually Talon don't have the ability to defend Lunch, and as soon as that happens, Raphael now on the Genji picks out Lunch and Lunch changes.
Yeah, you can't defend Lunch, someone else pick it out from the fridge and eat it.
Yeah, you didn't write your name on it, that's the biggest thing.
I hate you so much, Craig. Alright, well let's see how Talon now go on the second aggression here, because they've actually swapped off onto this triple DPS now. With Lunch on the Soldier. Pulse Bomb from SO doesn't really convert too much. EMP is there, and they'll kind of walk into it. They do convert into Raphael, and actually all these members of DeToNator are a bit too low here. Ivar and the Baby Diva not really able to get back into that mech, in fact not anywhere near it. Talon are getting aggressed out though. It is indeed a big wipe, but they need to stay on this point long enough for Small Pond to actually rejoin them. Otherwise, again, the defenders' respawns can start to overwhelm them, but taking Nakyup, keeping him busy on the side is actually helping them a lot, because they are going to be able to possibly get a second third off this. Mui getting aggressive with this Dragon Blade may only be able to find a Diva, but he'd actually be happy enough with that, and they're still converting them through. Ivar going down before he actually gets an ultimate up, and Lunch has managed to get a tactical visor from 0 to 100 in that whole fight. Now totally set up on this point. Not enough members from DeToNator to contest it here, and it's going to be trickle respawns, and they're going to go again into Time Bank with more time by the looks of things. Small Pond, the last bit of loose change deep in the pocket there, but it is enough to purchase their lunch.
And actually 6 ultimates was how many Talon got. They didn't get them all at the same time. They got them sort of throughout the entire attack on the second camp, but it was just right in the order that they needed as well. They had the sound barrier early, used the sound barrier. Transcendence was lined up to be used later on. They had all the tools they needed, and eventually everyone had something to give. Everyone was responsible and had input to really win that last attack for Talon. So actually, I think they did a lot better without the Widowmaker, despite getting much better early pickoffs, despite having a much better start, you know, killing killing Nakyup without even him using the EMP, things like that. They had a much better game with the Widowmaker, but actually the execution of the results was so much better when they just went back onto Lunch with the Soldier, which is also something we haven't seen. We haven't seen Lunch play the DPS, and now we know he's capable of that.
There was something really interesting in there as well, by the way. I mentioned this on King's Row, is DeToNator were giving a lot of respect to the Sombra, but weren't necessarily countering it fully, if you will. Whereas what we saw Talon do there was actually counter the Sombra. They drew the Sombra out to force the EMP commit and then just collapse back in. And then because that fight started with the EMP, it wasn't up later on when Talon actually wanted to commit their ultimates, and they were much more free to do so. So they didn't give respect to it and give space to it and just sort of let Nakyup hold on to it for later. They drew it out of him so that then they could play their games.
I think DeToNator's biggest mishap was the time between getting the first cap and then going to cap number B. They really should have gotten a lot more off that push.
Number
it's
B.
surprising not to get anything there. That's what really hurt DeToNator on their initial attack on through, and that's really starting to affect them now.
All right, well now again on the attack is DeToNator, and going for the same play as last time, but Trono getting very pressured out on the side, barely scraping away with his life here, but that means DeToNator have an opportunity to get aggressive themselves, with Raphael very well set up on this high ground.
Mui's already low, but Mui is somewhat close to EMP. If they can punish Hanji, they might have a start, and they absolutely do.
A bit too deep and not really with any follow-up, as now Small Pond pressured out as well. The EMP out from Mui is just not really going to find anything because there's no divers to capitalize and most of their DPS is dead. Esso's constantly getting pressured out, and really it's just Mui, and Raphael is still uncontested on this high ground. DeToNator, they're getting to play their game here, and it is working a charm.
And it just seems like every so often Hanji does just jump in, unfortunately not with the support of the rest of his members, does get picked out. Then Mui says, well, it's time that I actually have to use the EMP. It did already just come up as well, but we're already one member down. We've got to try and save this fight somehow. Now you're not really set up for the second cap that well. Then they're got to kind of got to show what they can do here at the initial cap over, because the last time they were in this position, they played it unfortunately quite well.
Oh man, Hanji again, Trono just absolutely hunting him down. The Winston cannot catch a break there. You know, that's illegal in a lot of countries, killing gorillas, but let's get on to the point now, says DeToNator, getting very aggressive with this one. Need to give respect to the
ultimates.
EMP, indeed. And the Pulse one doesn't find much, but Raphael converts a few. They still haven't found Mui, though, and there is just enough members here that Talon can swing this one back around if they get a good EMP. But if they lose Hanji, then it's going to be a lot harder, and that's exactly what happens now. Mui finally able to commit it, but yeah, Sound Barrier can come in after the fact, and Small Pond isn't in a safe enough position to really contest. It's just Iso who's going to lose his life while throwing out the Pulse Bomb, and now they convert to Small Pond as well. So no one is able to follow up at all on anything that Mui has done here. DeToNator very set up here, and they may not quite get a second time bank with the way this is going. Talon are just stalling out a little bit extra, have also swapped onto Reaper, so thematic bonus points, but DeToNator are looking set to get a cap through here if they can just train out these last few members.
Yeah, and Talon is just trying to hold on to this, but Small Pond will eventually die here. DeToNator respawn, reinforce, and regroup so well, and for Talon, unable to get enough pickouts here. Mui got a decent number of trades, but not enough.
Hanji actually might just be able to buy the team enough time to fully regroup, but not if he loses his life that quickly. Lunch throwing out his ultimate, again trying to buy time for Esso and Mui, but dying while he's throwing it out means he can't get back into the mech and continue contesting, so really it just drew out more seconds. Like I said, does mean that DeToNator won't get a second time bank, but it is still capped.
I think so far DeToNator have, despite Talon getting a quicker time overall, DeToNator have, I believe, played a cleaner second cap game. When we look at their initial attacking phase, the way they won that attack was in a much cleaner fashion, in the sense that you can see the setup procedure for them. They were able to get players in the positions they wanted. They were able to sort of really play the ultimates and ration them out in the orders that they wanted as well, picking out specific players on the Talon side to get a certain respawn order from the Talon guys as well. And just for DeToNator now going into this second cap play, what really affected DeToNator the first time was their ability to translate that cap A onto the cap B, that initial movement between the 2 points. That was a big failure on the first attack. The second attack around in the time bank, that was exactly how they needed to play it the first time, and you see the results, a big difference.
Now here's the thing, right? Because that went into overtime there when that cap went through, if Talon cap and they still have time on the clock, they actually get an opportunity to cap first point again and can just win it here. If not, they will tie and go to golden point. So basically they have to double cap here, and they have to do it within the time frame they have. Now, I believe they get a bit of extra time when they cap this point, so it is very doable for them, especially if they do it in similar time. So they have at least given themselves that opportunity despite DeToNator capping.
And I think the way that Talon have done it is they leverage the fact that Lunch gets a few picks. That's been really good. But if Lunch can't get this, and by the way Talon played last time as well was they waited for Lunch to get a pick quite early. They waited so long, Nukyop easily got an EMP. If they do that again, I think it's too dangerous.
Yeah, dangerous is exactly the right term there. But at the same time, if he gets early kills, then not so dangerous at all. And we'll have to see how he's able to play it out because, honestly, DeToNator have read this. They've dealt with it a little bit more now, so they can...
Good Discord.
Yeah,
That's a really nice team.
Wow, so never mind dealing with it. I mean, they read the situation correctly, sure, but they did not execute adequately, and now they just kind of lose themselves the point there by completely misfiring, trying to contest Lunch on that ground.
Ouch. I mean, this is now when Lunch really goes to work. That's a nice triple tap from the guy himself.
And that's the EMP as well. That was the only tool DeToNator had. They actually had enough members alive that they could have gone in for a recontest with that EMP, but without Nukyop there anymore, they just can't. And this is going to be a cap for Talon in very quick fashion.
That was really gross. I mean, this is the kind of Widowmaker that would have shot Lady Volskaya and not the one that missed.
You know, you're not wrong there. And that would have been a very different cinematics. What if it just ends there, like it does all the setup, and then
Sombra is like, what do I do now?
She just hits the shot, and then like it just ends.
Sombra is like, I lost my friends. Oh well.
The infra side up, and I mean, DeToNator are giving it a lot of respect. You can see they're actually not showing his face was him, but now they commit the EMP, and Talon can just kind of wheel back from it. They're able to, actually, no, aren't quite able to keep those last few members alive. Trona a little bit too aggressive for Talon to retreat safely from, but they keep most of their members, and the EMP is now quite a long way from up.
I think the biggest thing for DeToNator was not just their inability to play against Lunch on their first cap, but really losing him to SO quite early. That was unnecessary. They should have been able to protect him. They should have been able to punish out SO. They had 6 players there while Lunch was busy being protected on the other high ground. I don't understand how SO got that kill. That was the first mistake, and then losing everyone else to Lunch after that. Well, I mean, you're already 1 player down. If you try and aggress in, that's exactly what happens.
Talon have the resources now to really get aggressive here in earnest. They've swapped Lunch back onto the Soldier, which is what worked for them last time. Mui with this ultimate does have to climb back up to try and find Raphael. Raphael just leaves him on a wild goose chase, and now the same is going to be done by him, unfortunately. But they are still able to get aggressive on the point, having picked off Trona. So 1 ultimate for nothing isn't too bad to start. Now he catches Nukyop. That's great, close to the EMP as well. Able to route out him as well, at the very least keeping him away from the team here. Mui is just kind of, again, being led on wild goose chases now.
Mui might die.
As DeToNator get aggressive on the rest of the point now, and by not having Mui, that extra DPS, it just kind of gave Trona and Raphael the room to maneuver for free.
And that was a much bigger waste of time for Mui than it was for him. If you're on his side right now, you're happy to just play this ring around the rosy with Mui, and he's had a really tough game because he played the Dragon Blade, got immediately out-juked by Raphael, tried to go onto him and then couldn't clean him up, almost died even. So now we're in the sort of stage where time's running out. The best they can do is cap in overtime.
And that was a huge ultimate advantage as well that they just kind of threw away. Now they're going to be fighting through a lot of very difficult things to fight through. You're going to be exposed to that the tactical visor. You're going to have to fight through the extra health bars of the sound barrier, and there's the EMP already committed. They do catch him. It's one down with, and Lunch going down, unfortunately, means DeToNator, despite losing that sound barrier with this tactical visor, are pumping the shots in, and this is just Talon contesting for its own sake. This is not particularly salvageable here unless Esso is a miracle worker, which he is unfortunately not. Good time Transcendence buys them more mileage, and hold on a second, maybe I've spoken too soon. Esso may just be a miracle worker as he pops Ivar's mech, and now suddenly, oh, there we go. At long last, Bexel deals with him. They do keep the contest alive a little bit, but it's only keeping it alive. It's not really breathing life into their own attack. Hold on a second. Mui at the 11th hour may just be able to salvage it once again. Catches Raphael out of the skies. Catches Trona, his counterpart. If they can reinforce now, they may just be able to do it. But where are all these members? They're finally getting healers on the point. The respawns will come in for DeToNator, and they have time to regroup. Is this still an uphill battle for Talon as they have to deal now with all these members on the point? Yeah, Bexel does indeed have ult. That's a lot of stall out time. And he's already got Mui as well. The rest of Talon are only only just respawning and getting
Lunch
back
can
in this one. That is an ult out of Vexel, as Lunch ulting as well will catch Ivar, but the self-destruct catches Hanji. They lose their ability to get on the point itself, and they're still getting just barely beaten back, really taking it to DeToNator in this last moment here, but they don't seem to have the extra gas in the tank, and so as it turns out is not a miracle worker. DeToNator will set themselves up 2-1 in the series.
And Miracles, unfortunately, they do run out. It turns out there's a little bit of an ammo count on that or something, but for Esso, he nearly brought it back, and the amount of times
you gotta wait for your miracle
the
to
amount of
respawn.
times you had to sort of just readjust it and say, hold on a second, hold on a minute, is it over? Okay, no, it's over. Wait, no, it's not, still not over. Is it now? Okay, now it's over.
Very dramatic Overwatch. I'll give you that. It's kind of like a soap opera, right? Right as you think something. It's like a cliffhanger, right? It's like we need. It's like a character's like, we need to talk. I'm leaving you, and then it just cuts to black, right? And then the next episode is like, I'm going to the store for 5 minutes. Do you want anything?
I was well held by Talon at the end of the day because this situation was far more difficult for them. They have respawned the reinforcement distance much longer. The fact that they kept it alive over multiple rounds of fights where you kind of thought DeToNator got this now, and then DeToNator didn't have it. And Talon kind of were in a situation where, by the way, they were still respawning. Even when they fully wiped out DeToNator, you heard the gong go off. That was still a situation where Talon were not fully equipped yet.
Yeah.
Still waiting for their full 6 members. Eventually, their members get there, but you got to fight against the full force of DeToNator once again. So
yeah, and that's the thing. Exactly.
Wasn't
After that kind of shock turnaround by Esso and Mui there, they actually needed to get a similar number of kills between the two of them again. And that's
without
actually,
ults.
without ults, exactly, which is a really tough ask. But putting DeToNator in that position in the first place actually does speak to, frankly, the individual playmaking skill of Talon, which is something that they've banked on. We talked before this particular game about the relative strengths and weaknesses of these two teams. Look, yeah, they're not necessarily this strong and then they're weak in the opposite part. It's like they got this strong individual playmaking. It's not that they're weak at coordination, they're weak at defense, but that was the strength really going off.
Well, DeToNator now come up ahead. We're about to head into map 4 pretty soon. And it is a best of 5, by the way, so DeToNator are in fact on match point. It could all end for Talon, at least for this match, as they're about to head into lower break. And if they lose, we're going to find out what happens after this break. Welcome back to the OPC Season 2 qualifiers. We're about to head into map number 4 of Talon Esports versus DeToNator Korea. As DeToNator Korea pull ahead 2-1 in the series. It's going to be Escort next, and it will be Talon's pick.
Yeah, it absolutely will, because of course they did lose that one. It was Talon's pick last time as well. Their pick of Volskaya, which unfortunately didn't work out for them. DeToNator got the double cap. Talon unfortunately failed. So here we kind of have the situation. Actually, Talon fairly convincingly 3-1 Lijiang. One of those maps got quite close, but the rest were actually pretty heavily Talon favored, with the exception of the one that went to DeToNator, which was similarly close. We are going to be going to Route 66 though, and I think this very much plays to Talon's strength on the dive.
I think so as well. For Talon, you sort of have the option to play a little bit of Sombra on this as well, which has definitely been a bit of a crutch for Talon, I want to say.
Yeah.
I think for Talon, they need to be able to not rely on Sombra as much and have the other options, because I think when they play non-Sombra strats, whether that's...
Nombra, as it will.
Whether that's between running Mui on Genji or running, Lunch on even a Widow or the Soldier, that's been far more effective, and it's kind of quite an explosive team. That would be a good way to describe Talon, because they have these insane moments that they just absolutely blow up, which is ironic because the other team's name is DeToNator. But DeToNator are this very patient, slow team that, actually kind of get punished when they play a little bit too quick for their usual pacing.
Yeah.
But then other times, when they're allowed to set up, when they're allowed to just get this death ball rolling, they just seem to be kind of a very impenetrable force.
It's like the most unsuitable name, isn't it? You're right. They aren't necessarily a team that...
It's controlled detonation. It's kind of detonation where you've given everyone enough time to evacuate.
It's demolition. It's demolition,
demolition.
As opposed to like fireworks. That's actually, okay, I was just kind of memeing out there, but that's
Demolition
actually a very legitimate analogy for the difference between these two teams, I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Fireworks and demolition.
Yeah, well, seriously, DeToNator Korea are more like a controlled demolition. They set themselves up, they take their time, they hit the go button, and the other team crumbles. Whereas Talon are very much fireworks, and sometimes they actually forget to let go of the firecracker before it goes off.
Yeah, it's the kind of fireworks where it's just like, Let me light this one up. I didn't quite read in the box. It says something amazing like
you can't tell
blinding
which side
star
is the top.
36, and you're like, okay, that sounds like a great one, but you don't know what the firework actually looks like.
Can't tell which way is up, and you accidentally put it down on its side and light it, and then you just, that's your fence, just gone.
Yep, it's your neighbor's
Because
window,
I've
your
definitely
neighbor's cat.
never done that. I'm not at all speaking from experience here.
Right,
Out the
Trono's
gate, though,
Trono's
yeah.
going to give the widow a go this time.
This is interesting, and it's going to be very pick dependent, but again,
Once
with
made
the
it
kind
work.
of, with the measured way that they play, I think this could really work for them.
But you also don't want to be too measured here because, you know, one good way to play a Widowmaker is give the Widowmaker a lot of space by playing a little bit more aggressively. So for DeToNator, not really their style. Maybe they can opt into that. Maybe they can show something they haven't yet, but, you know, they got to show it.
Yeah, moving back onto the Sombra as well, I think is again going to have a really hard time, if not a harder time actually, because he's going to have to be shutting out Raphael and Trono. It's really hard for the Sombra to get onto both of those. He is going to commit a very early EMP here.
One of the quickest
Yeah,
EMPs.
but there's no one ready to follow up on it. No one's in a good enough position. And actually, DeToNator on the aggressive here as the building starts to come on down. They fire off all the charges, and Trono, speaking of firing off, picking himself up a double there. They secure the payload, get it underway, and Talon just complete misfire on the defense. They forgot to let go of the firecracker.
Ouch, and that's going to be a staggered kill as well. Talon are definitely not going to be able to go for a counter contest this one, at least not one that they want to. They're going to be diving in with tanks. The DPS is still coming back online. It's just a very hard situation to play in. So, I don't know, time to give it up. I think DeToNator got this one. DeToNator played as expected, extremely controlled. They got the kills when they needed to. The EMP was just ineffective.
Yeah, they've actually swapped up their team comp a little bit and are going to go ahead and contest this, but Lunch already losing his mech means the rest of this team probably should just back away. They're not going to get much more for this, even with Mui getting the kill on the back end. Actually, now he and Esso
phone needs help.
Yeah, this is actually terrible for Mui and Esso. They opted to not back off, and then they went deep. They're now way too deep. They don't even have a way to retreat safely or get kills. They're just going to have to kind of wait to die here.
Yeah, for Talon, they just kind of went after Raphael. They didn't actually get the kill into Raphael, then forgot, oops, well, the cart's still moving.
And the team is dead. Like,
that's...
And these are the two with like the most movement abilities. They should have been using them to get out from the lost fight.
This is when you just chucked in that firework in your neighbor's face.
If the firework has already misfired, don't pour gasoline on it. Well, now...
Infrasight's going to make it very difficult now as well for Talon to try and really navigate this section of the map. So for at least the next few seconds, well, Infrasight did end, so now it's time for DeToNator. If they can find an opening, this is about where you want to play.
That's a really good way to create space there. Lunch just barely getting back in the mech, but it's not really going to help. Actually, sorry, not barely getting back in the mech. It's Ivar getting in the mech and Lunch dying. Just so I'm clear. DeToNator are underway. That's what really matters.
And this car realistically just hasn't stopped moving right from the initial start of the game because DeToNator have been very much piling on and pushing as a 6-team, or rather a 5-member team with Trono just on the sidelines. He's on the sort of Overwatch position, as it were.
And now finally getting aggressive is Talon. They're really trying to leverage the sound barrier, but they're forced to use the ultimate out of Hanji as well to keep him alive. It does mean they get the convert through, but it was Mui doing the converting. I don't know that Hanji really needed to commit the ult. It was only to save his own life, and actually the respawn's close enough that he could have just kind of held it. But in any case, they do stop up the payload at long last.
Which is important, and they may have overcommitted to do that, but they've actually stabilized, and they haven't stabilized for the entire defense so far. They need a little bit of time to recollect themselves. They gotta maybe wait for DeToNator to be a little bit too patient, because DeToNator still give a lot of respect towards Talon. The way they play slowly. So Talon, you get given more time to rebuild these ultimates, and you're gonna need them.
Yeah, Trono now onto the Tracer here so he can contest this backline a little bit better, but that does actually open up Mui a bit better to dive onto Raphael, and they force out the Transcendence from small pods so that Talon can kind of regroup, because DeToNator were busy sneaking the payload past. They were playing the payload, and Talon, I don't know, they were trying to play three-dimensional space chess. Just didn't really work out. They played the wrong game.
This is now the second time they've kind of forgotten about payload, which is a very unfortunate thing for Talon if they want to be able to get this defense. And by the way, Talon are on match point. They cannot be affording to make these kind of mistakes again.
Yeah, and they finally lose their lunch. Oh dear.
Never gets old.
I only just noticed that that's the thing. But look, now DeToNator are just so set up here, so far forward as well. They're just leaving one person back on the payload while they just kind of pick off these scattered members of Talon. And like, Talon, they're so busy going like, all right, how are we going to set up? Where are we going to set up? Like, what are we going to do? What clever thing are we going to do? That they're never actually in position
And check Hanji again, because Hanji has been one of the key targets so far for DeToNator to really pick on out. There it is.
Yeah, good pulse bomb to cut off the reinforcements for him as well means they're able to take out Lunch. And this tactical visor doesn't do too much itself. Most of the shots go into Lunch, but again, with the supports cut off from him, makes it very hard for Talon to really contest this. It's all going to have to be Esso. A good kill out from him with a pulse bomb is a great way to start it. As the respawn comes in from Hanji, they might just be able to get the contest going down now that Raphael is out of the picture. But again, they need to convert more kills here. They're struggling, but they finally get a few onto the supports, which should be enough to drive DeToNator back. Once again, a little bit closer maybe than Talon would be liking.
And I think with DeToNator, they actually had the option to back off a little bit earlier. They had the option to not give away an additional 3 picks. They lost Raphael quite early, and they lost a decent amount of their damage output. I don't think they were ever in a position where that was a place where they can close out the game. They were not going to just cap on through. As much as in the past, if we've gone on trend, they managed to stake the card on through twice now. 3 times, I just don't think Talon are that dumb.
No, certainly not. Well, and it'd be very hard to as well for the final point, but once again, Hanji forced to use his ultimate early just to save his own life. He's not really finding anything with this anyway. They do at least dive to take out him, so they're making it work for themselves, and a good catch onto Nakyab as well. Very confident by Mui. They're going to convert a few more here actually onto this D.Va as well, and holding onto the ultimate there. I think was quite disciplined. It would have been very tempting to use that just to get a full like 4K and really slam dunk the fight, but actually by holding it and getting trickle kills instead, Talon is set up much better now for this next one.
Unless something goes horribly wrong for Talon, they're going to be set up till, I would even say, the overtime, because they have a massive ultimate advantage. They have a lot of options to play the next couple of fights. DeToNator have a lot of situations where they can completely misfire. A bad Transcendence and an overcommit from them would definitely be, and this is not a good start already, having to use a Transcendence. No other ultimates have been committed by Talon yet. You're not even going to have Transcendence versus Dragonblade. Mui can absolutely go off.
That was a great start, and now all they've already got is Bexel to stall out his own life. The Transcendence comes out, but honestly, I don't even know if it was needed out of small pot. They were at least respecting the counter dive out of Ivar and Trona, but honestly, the 2 kills from the Dragonblade was all it took there. But Talon actually kind of exhausted their own ultimates by using the self-destruct as well.
Yeah, that was a pretty massive commit by Talon. I don't think they needed to commit that much. They had a great start. The Pulse Bomb got a stick onto Bixel, took him down really low despite not getting the kill. You force a Transcendence out. You just want to play defensively while the Transcendence is happening. Then you want to pull on the trigger. Even a Dragonblade, a single Dragonblade from Mui was enough to secure the fight. Everything else Talon used, I think, was an overcommit.
Absolutely would agree with you there, but still they can at least stall this one out to the overtime, which for Escort is not too bad a deal. Mui's on fire. Don't know when.
Put him out.
Yeah. Well, he's going to be busy putting him out. Actually, nearly took him out. That's really awkward name, but in any case, the sound barrier force out there for DeToNator. Yeah, you only just realized, but it actually gives Esso permission to go hard as Mui committed the EMP, but he's not really converting much, finally taking out Raphael, but honestly, they're getting so many members taken out themselves. The payload's moving again, as Esso is really the only person hard contesting this. Honestly, the Winston's doing so much work disrupting the backline, but finally DeToNator should be able to, Talon should be able to regroup and start beating back DeToNator. This is chaotic, man.
This is definitely very chaotic. Kind of reminds me of the last few moments of Volskaya Industries in that snipe back as well. Both teams waiting for the reinforcements of Raphael decides to go.
That's so great, though. Blocking it all up with the D.Va and Lunch pulling his weight there, absolutely. They are getting a few through, thanks to Trona, though. And now suddenly Hanji is in a lot of trouble. Going to have to commit the ultimate to stay alive, but he can't save his CPS.
He's melting.
He is absolutely melting because, once again, Raphael uncontested. By going down so early at the start of the fight, he's actually managed to completely regroup, and they're on the cusp of capping. Once again, at least it will be pushed to the overtime as they kill off Esso as well. Him just kind of just getting tranquil on the point, man. He is having a great time soothing him to himself. As DeToNator very much going to push this one over. It's just getting these last few kills through and self-destruct for style points. That was very strong by DeToNator, but actually Talon really did make them fight for it on the last stretch.
It's a very good example of DeToNator's ability. Like when I say they're a team that when they just kind of deathball together, they get a bit of a roll going. They kind of feel like a freight train from that point onwards, because just feels a little bit impossible to take them apart. And Talon are throwing everything at this freight train, and it's barreling on through. It's the slowest freight train in the world. It's like a freight train going at minimal pacing.
It'd be faster to use airmail.
But I mean, you're not stopping it, and that's the other problem.
That's the crucial thing. I mean, maybe you'd stop a plane instead. I don't know. You know, by the way, just speaking of stopping, when you're on defense, the point is to stop the payload, right? But when you're on like Dorado and stuff, it's just like a truck. So someone's got to be driving that truck, right?
Well, no,
why are you trying to kill the 6 people escorting the truck? Why don't you just shoot the driver?
What if it's the future and you don't need a driver to drive a truck? What if it's completely automated?
You know,
you don't know.
That actually makes a ton of sense. We already have self-driving cars. Like, that's not even the future anymore. That's actually just
on
now.
Hollywood, you have a car that's just sentient. He's just a talking car. So even then, it is a talking car. Am I wrong? I'm pretty sure it's a talking car.
Yeah, I don't actually think there's anyone in the car.
The car is the person. I don't know. Either way,
That was Star Wars right there. That was intense.
I think back to the game just for a second, because one thing to consider here is for Talon, they didn't have their first stabilized fight was right at the end of, or rather towards the middle of the Streets phase, and that was quite short-lived. Talon didn't get a good defense until right at the end towards the 2-minute mark, where I said, look, they're probably going to be able to drag that one out to overtime, and yet they did. And they dragged that one out to overtime with a big ultimate advantage, which they kind of squandered a little bit. But for Talon, they had a nil defense right up until that 2-minute mark, which is a big problem.
Yeah, and part of it as well was just really weird commits on the attacks as well. Going for fights that were either already kind of lost and sometimes even continuing to go too deep well after the fact. But in any case, it's a new dawn, it's a new day, and now they are actually on the attack themselves, so they can't accidentally let the payload slip past.
By the way, just the next time Sombra goes invisible, we're on the POV, just check the arm movements, because they're the most exaggerated running arm movements I've ever seen.
Yeah, she is intense. I've never seen anyone run like that, but I tell you what tell you what I am seeing, though, is Talon getting really aggressive and having it absolutely pay off now as they pressure out Raphael as well. That was an interesting translocate, actually, but the payload is underway. DeToNator to at least fall back, so they'll probably get themselves another contest.
He's super low here. They need to be able to regroup, and maybe they can get back in, because you're not playing into EMP, so Mui is, you know, for the first time, he doesn't have just the godlike EMP coming out, and for DeToNator, I definitely expect them to come in.
Yeah, like I said, they have the time, and they have a lot more time than what Talon did, so they're really letting the payload take a slow crawl there, actually.
Raphael.
Raphael, indeed. Good dive by Mui to catch that. Now, Esso is actually just keeping all of these supports at bay as well. Means no follow-up for the tanks, who are now the ones getting picked off as DeToNator, second time around, getting routed, and Talon actually very measured in how they're reacting to DeToNator's contests here. Really, the payload hasn't stopped at all.
This is about the most picked apart I think Talon have been the entire evening for, for DeToNator, because Talon are just really strolling on through. This is very similar to kind of how Talon also operated on their first cap, just never really stopped. I mean, the cart just continues going. At least, you know, Talon kind of made the mistake of not contesting the cart. DeToNator just, they didn't even get a chance, I don't think.
Good aggression.
They got fell apart.
Yeah, good aggression by Mui on the backside, and then Esso kind of goes in. They sort of, you know, tag team and swap out the other steps in the ring, and now that the EMP to commit, DeToNator know that they can't go too deep on this one, but Talon do need to give respect to the damage that can come out of DeToNator here. They are doing that. That's the commit there, as DeToNator are a little bit deep, but they convert onto Hanji anyway, so Lunch, he's trying to convert back, and he is making it at least work for them, as unfortunately the Diva kind of having to take a bit of a dive there, and underway once again is Talon, despite DeToNator actually converting the kills through the EMP.
DeToNator need to go for another regroup. They're actually saving some ults here, so eventually DeToNator are going to get a very even fight. The bad thing for them is Talon have been so economic, which is not something Talon have done against DeToNator for the majority of the maps. It's usually the other way around, but for this time, Talon have a really decent advantage that they could still throw away. We've seen already, we've seen Talon overcommit before, but for the time being, they're in such an unstoppable sort of...
Wow. Forcing out a very, very early transcendence from him, which is good for them, but Smallpon has to commit his own pulse bomb. Really kind of thrown to the wind there for Esso, but they are converting the kills anyway. Ivar's going to have to commit a self-destruct here because he's losing his mech, and Esso able to convert onto the heal as well. That's going on. So now it's really just... actually, Bexel, he's held onto his ultimate. He is going to have to commit it now if he wants to stall, but actually doesn't, so that will result in a cap to go through for Talon. And once again, honestly, these... Talon aren't really being met with much resistance. DeToNator are just, like you said, getting picked apart when they go for these contests.
This is really unexpected on DeToNator. I don't think so far in the entire series DeToNator have been so far behind in all respects, just everything, and even just losing that health back at the back without having it contested, just caught with their pants down. You have Raphael looking the wrong direction, finally realizes Mui is there, Mui gets the health pack, runs away, just very small things Talon are getting away with, but for the first time DeToNator are vastly ahead in ultimate advantage. Now they can't squander the situation.
Chona committing his pulse bomb for nothing, though, does mean they're a little bit less ahead, but they're able to get aggressive anyway. Oh dear, losing Chona as the EMP is committed onto them. It was all that Talon had to use, but my goodness, are they using it here. Raphael using this tactical visor is just finding nothing because Talon scattered to the 4 winds, and now they're able to get back onto the aggressive, having drawn out those ultimates and evening up the score.
And that was actually a great defensive EMP because Talon knew DeToNator wanted to go aggressive there. DeToNator did. The EMP caught out enough people that the players that wanted to use the ultimate didn't even get the chance to. So for DeToNator, their aggressive attack there was just kind of split up. They couldn't really execute the way they wanted to.
Yeah, like you said, very well reacted to. And now the same thing again. Need to be careful to not go too deep as Bexel goes down. Lunch is able to hold on to his life there. Just honestly too hard to dive onto him. They commit a sound barrier as well, which means they want to get aggressive knowing that the tank is out of the picture, and they pick the other one as well. Lunch now with this tactical visor, finally finding the placement on the rest of these members. Goodness me! Yeah, that's huge. And now with the staggered respawns, if they can actually pick off either of these tanks before they get towards the end, they are at least waiting for their other team members. But if any member of DeToNator gets picked off going out the gate now, then they will just probably lose this one up. The pulse bomb goes in, doesn't quite get the stick, but Talon still have resources to use here despite that. The Transcendence is good for them, and it means DeToNator had to commit everything they've got. Bexel went down, and Ivar can't get back into the mech as they close off on Raphael, smacking him down with the butt of the gun as they get really aggressive onto this last stretch. And I tell you what, even if they get pushed back, there's still so much time here on the clock anyway as Mui commits the EMP. They try to commit on the last few. Great hack means Bexel can't use the ultimate for a few seconds. They convert the kill at the clutch moment there before he can run that one out, and the mech going down as well. Once again, no one ready to tank for these DPS members of DeToNator. They are at least beating back the tide, so once again, unless ESO pulls out a miracle, they may just get repelled here, but again, so much time on the clock, and DeToNator with no room to maneuver. This is looking really, really rough.
Oh, wow. By the way, nice deflick at the end there. What I was trying to say for DeToNator, they actually get the stabilize in the final moments. I mean, you really can't push it any deeper than that. Bexel loses the ability to get the ult out, but actually at the end of the day, I think for Talon, they ran out of resources. They had ults to start with, used every single ultimate, didn't have enough left. Now they're going to come back in with a couple of ults of their own. Bexel finally gets an ultimate out though.
Very early, yeah, and well, it was because he was stuck and he's still low anyway, the EMP now to shut out Ivar's usefulness in that mech, and Bexel was low. He's actually getting good pressure onto Lunch, but with that Primal Rage not running anymore, he will at least pick off Lunch, but while he's busy doing that, yeah, the rest of the team is just getting destroyed. Dragon Blade's ready, but Raphael can't use it, he's too low, and honestly, Bexel tunnel visioning was not able to tank for the rest of his team. Stall outs now from DeToNator with him on the point, but once again, Talon have the members still here. Oh dear, ESO losing his life means they now have a few too few members here maybe. Nakab does get picked off. They are desperately trying to do it, but Raphael finds himself running straight into a Transcendence, has to route around to catch Lunch, does at least get him, but oh, Ivar, clutch self-destruct to secure out the last few members, and now suddenly Talon again getting repelled. DeToNator, it was dire, but they did hold.
DeToNator are only just clutching it through. They're not even holding cleanly. They're only holding through by the final few moments. It's even still a 1-for-1 trade. Every time there's 1-for-1 trade, it's not working for Talon because the respawn differences are so massive when the card is that far pushed in, and every single time DeToNator just respawned with one ultimate that they need. Last time they had Primal Rage available. This time they were Dragon Blade available. Now they've got a Sound Barrier too. The Transcendence tool was so big from him as well. So for DeToNator, they still every now and then just have the tools. One good EMP could close it out, but Mui has to get that and he's got to hit it big time.
And now we're finally starting to see just the individual playmaking that can come out of DeToNator here. I'll be honest, it's not with the same shining brilliance of Talons, but combined with the relatively disciplined play, they're looking good now as they gear up for the final defense.
All right, here comes the EMP. Should be looking ready to get something done here. Has been spotted out super early though, so that's a nice juke play.
That is very nicely done as they immediately convert onto him. They need to convert a few more though. Bexel going down is good for them, but he can respawn as well, so they need to close out these extras. Desperately trying to take out Ivar, and that is indeed what they will do. Demeching the Diva. Yeah, has ult indeed, throws it out there. Now to close out those last few kills. Is actually struggling for targets here as DeToNator. They want to try and respawn before they come in for the recontest, but they know that it's a little bit close for comfort. They can't wait for everyone. He can stall with that ultimate, but he's the only one there because no one else has really come out the gates just yet. Now Raphael is there. They're committing the Transcendence onto him, but where was that when Bexel was on the point? Ivar is even getting pressured out. Raphael, he needs this Dragon Blade. He doesn't get it in time, and the Sound Barrier for Talon keeps them all fine and dandy as they convert the last few. Ivar, no mech, and the EMP to slam dunk it through and overtime for themselves as well. So DeToNator running down so much of the clock. Fantastic work for them. But unless Raphael gets something huge, it will be capped over, and both teams will get themselves one last shot to push it through.
sigh of relief there from Talon is they just know how close it was right at the end. They've seen this situation. They saw it on Volskaya and they couldn't get it over the line. The fear was definitely within the team. They knew how tight the margins were towards the end, and just a string of unfortunate, I would say, deaths for DeToNator, but in a specific order. So the second to last fight, you had him with the Transcendence available, but Pixie dies right before him can get the Transcendence on the point. It happens again now for DeToNator the last fight. Just Pixie primal rages, he just gets melted down. Pixie comes in with the Transcendence a little bit too late. You said, where was the Transcendence? He was still respawning. He couldn't get it there quick enough, and by the time it was there, it just wasn't there to save him. And both times as well, Raphael died with Dragonblade. He was just too low. He wasn't able to use it. Had Raphael had the time to spawn again, maybe the Dragonblade comes out. That's when DeToNator have the potential to save the fight one more time.
And quite often we are actually seeing Bexel tunnel vision a little bit. I may touch on that a bit more later though, because the one thing I really kind of want to touch on is with that defense, yeah, DeToNator, they were holding on, but they were just barely holding on. That is a strength because they were holding on because they were playing cleanly and they were using the right things at the right times, generally speaking. Talon, though, when they were holding their defense, were holding much more convincingly until they lost convincingly.
Time-based situations, kind of dicey for both teams. You know, sitting under 1 minute, Troner back onto this Widowmaker, so he had some good success, but really where DeToNator did quite well was the 5-man sort of death ball push on the cart with Troner just sitting on the side playing Overwatch for Talon. And the literal sense and also metaphorically, so there it is.
They really need to be careful with how they operate this defense here, Talon. They don't want to let their payload get too much distance, but also don't want to commit to the fight too early. So we saw them kind of fail to play the time back on King's Row, and already DeToNator are getting a lot of good distance here.
EMP's up.
A lot of low members of Talon. Oh, Lunch losing his mech is terrible. EMP does come through, but this may not be the right time to commit it anyway. They are so desperately trying to take out Nakyup, but a little bit too deep as Esso, as Smallpong getting pressured out, and actually these return kills coming through, and DeToNator still being on the payload actually really hurts Talon, because they are able to keep this one alive as the time bank overtime starts to kick in.
Oh,
or are they? Hold on.
This is now a really tough situation for DeToNator. They've got no members. They have to just try and dive onto this cart.
Raphael is at least there with the support, but he's very much getting routed off. And actually, Talon were kind of petting both of those tanks. They're keeping them alive until the last possible minute to kill them, and actually have stopped up the payload in a really great position in this time bank. I completely rescind what I said before. Talon have impressed me as now the tanks dive into an EMP and a pulse bomb to secure it. And unfortunately, that one's probably going to be the play of the game, and the Sombra will go underrated. But in any case, great hold by Talon, where previously they have utterly failed.
Play of the game maybe, but the misplay of the game has to go to DeToNator for what they tried to do against the EMP. Time and time again, they played reasonably well against the EMP, sometimes incredibly well, sometimes not so well, but usually with pretty neutral effects where they don't really cop too much of the bad effects from EMP. But that time around, half the team decided to stay on the cart to keep the push going, maybe to play aggressive, counter dive the other team. The other half wanted to run, and the other half that ran, they ran so far back, they were nearly at spawn. So Millie, despite only getting one kill with the EMP, he did his job. He just scattered the entire DeToNator force. Had DeToNator just played together, played the death ball, they would have been far more successful. How did they win before? They death balled appropriately, and they grouped up, and that's where their biggest strength was. As soon as they got split up, it was all over.
And actually, that was DeToNator not playing to the time bank, because the advantage of having some back off and some stay is you're trying to go even for kills. They actually did do that. But that only helps you when you've got the extra time to play with. Your respawns are closer, but if you're booking it to the payload because otherwise you lose the game, you don't actually get to properly regroup and coordinate, leveraging that closer respawn. So by splitting themselves up and going even, they ended up actually just favoring DeToNator. Sorry, Talon.
Yeah,
yes. Because the names had already swapped over, it threw me off for a moment. But in any case, it is now Talon on the offense here. See how they opt to play it.
So for Talon, they just had to play their game. They didn't have to do anything too special there. The EMP, it wasn't the best, but it did enough of a job. And in fact, DeToNator made the EMP work without even the EMP being effective.
Yeah, I'm really liking this triple DPS now with the Sombra involved. It's certainly grown on me, but they are going to have their work cut out for them for dislodging Raphael, given that they don't have a Genji to play with here. But they also don't have to get too much payload distance, so eventually Raphael may have to commit to the low ground.
Well, DeToNator had a real tough time defending the first cap anyway, as it was in their initial defense. So what they're doing well is Talon aren't playing too aggressively here. They're losing a decent amount of time. So
oh dear.
Losing Hanji early does also speak well for DeToNator now to try and hold up. They can get into the overtime. In fact, Talon are playing this correctly. Talon need to get the respawn. They're
Great
losing so many
dive.
members.
Huge dive by Bexel. They do at least demech Ivar. And they're still even converting some. Finally, Bexel backs off, but the healers being dead means Mui and Esso can't actually get their health back before they had to book it for the payload to force overtime. So now they're finally there, and no one else is able to dive with them. They don't have a diva there with them. Mui is trying to convert kills on the backside of this one, but who's even playing for the payload? Who's here to actually get kills? They only just have an EMP, and no one's here to follow up on it. And I don't believe it. DeToNator are going to hold Talon even further forward than what Talon just did, and they are going to win the series and knock Talon down to the losers bracket as Talon fall into complete disarray.
That was... it's even hard to use words to describe.
Tragic is how I would describe that.
Both teams had just really poor attacks. It's very difficult to kind of say it in a nice way, but both teams severely dropped the ball on their attack through on the time back. DeToNator had many problems playing against the EMP on that particular attack, but then when you go into Talon's case as well, they went aggressive, went to play the usual game with the EMP and whatnot, but as soon as they got aggressive upon they lost a member, they said, okay, that's cool, we can fall back, we can regroup here, we'll wait for the respawn, and then they lost additional members at a time that was just really awful for them. There were about 7 seconds left, 2, maybe even 3 members down, and you said, that's not the time where you've got to be trying to book it to the point. They had to do the exact same thing DeToNator did, and DeToNator are set up, so they're set up in a better way because they're set up where the card is even closer to the spawn. So.
Yeah. And the thing is, right, Sombra, and to a lesser extent Tracer, like at least Tracer can kind of duck in and out. Sombra does not want to be contesting the payload. Sombra wants to be flanking. Sombra wants to be disrupting. If Sombra is suddenly the person who has to be on the payload, you've already lost the game. And I'm actually kind of stunned, given that they can, that Talon actually didn't opt to the Genji on that last offense, purely because it's someone else who can contest the high ground, which you're going to struggle to do since you're not running a diva while you're opting into that triple DPS. You should know Raphael is going to want to run Soldier, and even then, the difference between Genji and Soldier is Genji doesn't need to get set up before he forces the enemy team off the payload. He does it by going aggressive himself, which is what Talon are so good at. I really feel they didn't play to their strengths at the end, and they didn't play against the strengths of the other team, which they absolutely could have done and actually could have really easily evened up that series.
I think so as well. I think that Route 66 was within winnable range for Talon, especially given how well played I think their attack was. I think DeToNator really dropped the ball on their defense, and their initial defense at least. And a surprising turn of events, DeToNator had an incredibly tough time holding that first cap A, and then suddenly the time bank around, you see a little bit of a changeover where, in fact, it is now DeToNator with not a spectacular defense, was more so on the side of Talon, where Talon played it so patiently for a team that is usually not the patient team. That's DeToNator's job. Talon played it where you only have 1 minute. When they actually went in, they had about 20 seconds left to go, so they didn't really press the go button. They didn't really try and start the fight until about 20 seconds left. And that's a bit too late, because if you lose that fight, which they kind of did, they didn't really lose it to start with. They just dropped 1 member and they said, well, back off. Now you're at 8 seconds. Now you're waiting for respawns, and you got to get to the point.
And that's 3 maps in a row, actually, where Talon's offense looked great. They all went into time bank, with Talon having more time. Their defense was a little bit subpar, and then their own offense just fell a little bit short of the mark. 3 times in a row, that was the difference between them winning that and losing that, because actually they won control. So with that now, they get knocked out into the losers bracket, and actually for DeToNator Korea, only 1 match now stands between them and making it into OPC Season 2.
Exactly, and we're going to find out exactly who will meet DeToNator Korea in that winners final after a break. It will be coming up, will be Team Ardian, also from Korea, versus Liberant Supreme from Japan. And like you said, Talon Esports now going into the losers bracket. The loser of that next match as well will meet Talon there, so we'll find out what happens after this break.